Welcome to the Sports Court. I'm Gregory Beatty alongside Eddie Cox on this Tuesday evening. Beautiful Tuesday evening, Eddie Cox. Hey, Eddie, a lot of football to talk about. Obviously, college football, obviously, pro football. The Cowboys kick off this Thursday against the defending Super Bowl champs, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that may be without Zach Martin, one of our best offensive linemen, our best offensive lineman. But hey, no excuses. Next man up. Go play ball. It's going to be in a hostile environment. Tampa Bay, let's hope we catch Tampa Bay having a hangover from that Super Bowl. But you know what? I want them at their best, to be honest with you. And I want to see what my Cowboys, I want to see how we stack up. I really want to see how we stack up. That'll be this upcoming Thursday. And then, of course, this upcoming Sunday, a full slate of NFL games. So really look forward to that. And, of course, college football season has kicked off. My Buckeyes got by Minnesota. The spread in that game, Eddie, was 14. They won by 14. Now, talk about that here in a second. Also, of course, MLB playoffs. The Astros still have a comfortable lead over the Oakland A's. They seem like they're going to be able to hold Oakland, be able to keep them at bay, and be able to win that division. So it's all going to be about how are they going to go into the playoffs? Are they going to be clicking on all cylinders, pitching, hitting, yada, yada, yada? We shall see. Of course, a lot of other baseball. Of course, you have the Dodgers still being the Dodgers and the Giants. They're nip and tuck, going at it back and forth with each other, Eddie. So we'll see which team wins that division. But no matter who wins that division, both of those teams should make the playoffs, whether it be wild card or not. Of course, the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Rays, and of course the Yankees are hit and miss. Their stars do not always play up to their potential, so you never know what you're going to get from the Yankees. Of course, the Tampa Bay Rays, like I've talked about over the past few weeks, they fly under the radar, but they continue to be one of the best teams in baseball. I think the second best record behind the Giants, if I'm not mistaken, but a team that can play on many different levels. They can hit the baseball, they can score runs, they can defend. And they don't even have Snell or Charlie Morton. They're just a machine. That's a team right there on the baseball side of things. Them, and I would say the Giants as well, but I would say more so Tampa Bay. I would say they're a team that reminds me of the New England Patriots, the way they do business if you go with a low payroll. Now, obviously, the Patriots spent a lot of money this past offseason kind of going against their usual way of doing things. But usually the Patriots are a team that just find a way to get it done. They find the right players to fit into that system, and that seems like what the Rays are doing. But, Eddie, what is up, my friend? I got a chance to watch my Buckeyes this past Thursday to kick off the college football season. Of course, UT was able to get a victory. Alabama looks like Bama. UCLA looks good. But starting out with my Buckeyes, were you able to watch that game?
I didn't see the Buckeyes game, no.
You did not see the Buckeyes game. Well,
no.
I did. And
I was keeping an eye on the ticker, but I was thinking typical Buckeyes.
Is that a good thing or bad thing?
You know, it doesn't really – you can't really tell until the end of the season,
That's
right?
True. That's true.
We're going to all give them hell the whole time this is going along if they start this trend like they have in past years of letting those guys that are inferior opponents just hang around.
Right.
You know, and we'll get after them in the third quarter. We'll reset with Ryan Day at halftime, and then we'll go after them in the second half, and we'll make things right. That works for them and has worked for them in the past. The only problem is, you know, teams like Indiana, they scare you. Or if you get into one of those fights with a team that turns out to be a dog and you didn't know they had that much dog in them, and then all of a sudden now we're talking about Ohio State with a one loss that they're not able to overcome, and it costs them,
especially in these days,
playoffs. In the playoffs.
Right.
That's the only time it
what?
becomes a problem. As long as they're able to scratch back or get things set straight and end up winning the ball game and win it convincingly. Which is funny that we talk about that, but in this day and age of college football, how convincing you win, that factors into the equation. So as long as they continue to you see at some point in time, week to week, the best football that Ohio State can play, then I think they're going to be just fine.
Right.
But if they go through a 2 to 3 week stretch where all of a sudden they're not looking like themselves and it looks like they're starting to tie those types of performances together, then you can start talking about having a major problem.
You know what? I agree with that. And the thing about it, that's why last week I said Ohio State cannot come out there against a tough Minnesota team in a hostile environment. Now, Ohio State played a lot of young players. Minnesota, a veteran-laden team, well coached, and they have 20 returning starters. And I said last week, Ohio State cannot go out there messing around. But here's what I say about Ohio State. And here's the thing. Now, of course, you're playing C.J. Stroud, who looks like he's going to be a tremendous quarterback. He comes out there in that first game, and, of course, this is his first game starting, obviously, on the road. Last year, there were not fans. It was not fans in the stadium last year. So Ohio State has a lot of young players, talented players. Make no mistake about their talent. Very talented players, very talented skill position players. But the thing about it is a lot of those guys have not played in front of fans.
Right.
I mean, this is the first time they played in front of –
or at this level.
Absolutely, absolutely. So what happened was C.J. Stroud comes out there, and it took him a while to get his rhythm. He was kind of nervous. He was nervous. He was overshooting his receivers. And my take on it was, hey, Minnesota, I'm talking about they had some players on that team. They had some very gritty players. I really hated that running back, Muhammad Abraham. I really hate that he got hurt, but here's a guy, I think he's going to play on the next level. Hopefully that's not an Achilles. When he went out with that injury, now, Ohio State had the game in hand by that time, in my opinion. I always knew the second half they would come out and do their thing. I knew that Ryan Day would go in and make those adjustments. That first half, the ball was kind of wet. It was raining, and you had a first-time quarterback starting his first game, very talented, I might add, and it just took him a while to catch his groove and to calm down and settle down and get used to the speed and a real college football game. Because, like the commentator said on Fox, hey, it does not matter what you do during practice and scrimmages and all of that. It does not matter until you get into a real game against live action against an opponent where you're going to have to really learn how things are done and how to get things done. So, obviously, he had to go through it in the first half. He had to find his footing, had to catch his groove, and Ryan Day did a great job of going in, making those adjustments, and utilizing that second half, utilizing that talent and the weapons on the outside. You look at Chris Olave. I mean, Chris Olave is a dog. Chris Olave is a dog.
I can only imagine he's gotten better since last year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny when you talk about, or what really stands out to me, you talk about the youth on this Ohio State football team, and you look at throughout the Big Ten, Ohio State is that team that seems to be turning over the roster more often. There's always guys moving on to the NFL. Guys aren't sticking around for their fourth and fifth years. That doesn't always happen at Ohio State. But you look around Big Ten, or the Big Ten, and that's what you have to deal with at teams like Minnesota, teams like Michigan State, teams that keep players around for a long time. So they end up, Penn State. They end up with these like you mentioned, veteran-laden squads that are focused and can put together 4 good, solid quarters of football, and not just one half come out flat,
right.
And then the other half show up. And that's kind of what you're worried about running into with such a young, and really untested Ohio State squad. But it's certainly going to be interesting to see, because all it takes is one big win against a real veteran late contender. I know Minnesota, they are a tough team, but let's get Ohio State against one of these later in the season, against
Oregon
one of these
week.
top 10 teams. Even against Oregon, that's going to be a really big test. But later on in the year, whenever it's really nut cutting time, and they get that big win, that could propel them into the playoffs, give them the confidence that they need, and give them the experience that they need. Because you know how it is at the college level. I mean, you could build almost every game with a playoff type atmosphere, because you could be one and done. If you lose, you could be out of the conversation
Absolutely.
for the college football playoffs. So I think along the way throughout the season, this team's going to get the experience that they need to be right there in the thick of things, and most likely they're going to be the team out of the Big Ten, and they're going to be one of the 4 in the college football playoff. And who knows how much noise they can make then. I mean, we all know Alabama, what a stud they are.
Yeah, we're going to talk about them in a second, too.
I think definitely the 2 through 4. I mean, it's going to be wide open. And, Georgia did impress some people, but I'm not going to write Ohio State out of it. I'm not going to say they're going to be on the cusp.
Not going to do that.
But I think that there's definitely an opportunity for this team to be the second best team in the country and to hold that position for the entire season.
Well, with that kind of firepower, I talked about Olave. Of course, you have Garrett Wilson. We're talking about 2 potential first-round draft picks right there. And then at running back, you have the threat of course, you have Master T, who's been there, who may be on the outside looking in. That's how talented these other running backs are.
Is it bad every time I hear that name, Master T? I think about Master P. Like,
right.
What a cool name, man.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It really is. And that's his real name from what I understand. I'm not so sure if but that's what he's always been called, obviously, Master T. But Travion Henderson, a true freshman. Then you have Mayan Williams. I mean, you have three tremendous running backs who can take it to the house at any time. But really, that true freshman, Travion Henderson, who was the best running back in the nation last year, and that guy right there, he looks like a monster. To go along with Mayan Williams, who had a 71-yard touchdown run. Then you had Henderson, who had that touchdown catch, took it to the house. I mean, so you have some explosion coming out of the backfield. Now, the thing with C.J. Stroud, now here it is. The first half, me and my boys were texting. You know how we text. And they tell me, GB, calm down. Calm down, GB. Because my thing was, I do not want to lose this first game against Minnesota. I do not care if it's his first game or not. You have to come in there, hit the ground running. I mean, you see what Joel Klatt said. I mean, hey, of course, he has to go through the fire. He didn't say it like that, but he's pretty much saying, like I said a second ago, he said, hey, you have to learn on the fly, and it's going to take you a while to get going. So, of course, I understood that. But my thing was, you cannot lose against Minnesota in this first game, to your point about being able to stay in the national championship hunt, because in college football, you lose one and you're pretty much out. Right. I mean, Michigan looks better, even though they lost their top player to an injury.
Well, unless you're losing to a top 5 team.
Unless you're losing to a top 5 team. It's early. My thing was, after the first half, I even text you, Eddie, didn't I? Mm-hmm. I said, watch this second half. Watch how we come out in this second half and do the damn thing. But my thing was...
Hey, let me give you a little peek into what text from Greg is like. You'll get a text and say, Buckeyes low-key pissing me off right now. And I'm like, oh.
Not even low-key. They were pissing me off. And you know what? You sound like my boys. They'd be like, GB, calm down, bro. Calm down. It's just the first half. I'm like, man. So I was confident that he would go in at halftime. I thought Ryan Day would make the adjustments and utilize that talent and the weapons on the outside. I thought he would pull them aside, settle them down. The talent is there. It wasn't a problem with his arm talent or his arm strength in the first half. He just could not hit the side of a barn. I mean, he was very, very inaccurate. And I'm like, this dude, I hope that's not his MO, being that inaccurate. Now, what I do need to see moving forward, because even in the second half, we ended up passing for over 294 yards. He passed for 294 yards, 4 touchdowns. I mean, it literally went from the first half looking like I was clamoring for Quinn Ewers, the touted true freshman that went in there, skipped his senior year from South Lake High School in Texas, and signed that big mega deal, $1.4 million mega deal, that name and likeness deal, marketing deal. And I was clamoring for him to get in there, even though I knew he wouldn't. He's probably like 3rd or 4th string right now. He has to fight his way up. But it went from literally the first half to the second half looking like Quinn Ewers is going to be the guy to looking like C.J. Stroud may be a top 5 pick when he comes out. and Quinn Ewers may be looking to transfer at some point. Because you know Ryan Day is going to put him in a position to succeed. But what I need to see moving forward from him is a lot of those throws he made, they were schemed up perfectly by Ryan Day. He was throwing to wide open receivers. Chris Olave on that long touchdown. Wide open, but he was able to get the ball to him. Credit to him. Whereas in the first half, he wasn't able to. Right. Garrett Wilson, wide open. So, of course, moving forward, we're going to have to see him make a lot of those tight window throws. Now, he has the arm talent to do it. Now, is he going to have the accuracy to do it? But the talent is there. The talent is there. Now, the talent is there on the offensive side of the ball. That's not my concern. Now, they were playing on the defensive side of the ball without their 2 starting corners. Now, it's the same defense, it seems like, for Ohio State, though. They always look like they're out of position. It always seems they give up way too many big plays. They give up way too much in the run game. And, of course, I like what Zach Harrison was able to do. He got that strip sack for a fumble. Haskell was able to take it in for that fumble. But the thing about it is the defense has to tighten up, and they have to quit getting gashed like that. They have the talent on the defensive line. They were playing some young guys in the secondary, got away with a couple of pass interferences. But make no mistake about it, I saw the talent. I mean, I saw the talent on the defensive side of the ball. If you look at the defensive back, what's his name real quick before we move on, but if you look at the defensive back for the Buckeyes, Denzel Burke, the true freshman, he's going to be a superstar. He's going to be a superstar. So I like the fact that they were able to go in and get that victory. A lot of people say, well, they were not that impressive. Well, the spread was 14. They won by 14 in a hostile environment against a veteran-laden team, a conference game, well-coached team on the road. So I'll take it. And I'd rather them go do that in a conference game, first game of the year, get all of that out the way, learn on the fly, learn quickly in that first game, than play someone like Akron in the first game and then go have to play a team like Akron. Like Oregon.
I mean, it doesn't really do anything for you. I don't think it helps you at all to schedule a lollipop like that to
Absolutely.
start off. And don't get me wrong, I don't think based off just one performance anybody would be writing Ohio State off. But when you look at the college football landscape, there's only 4 spots, and when you look at how strong the SEC is, if you have 3 SEC teams that could legitimately compete for that spot, and then you talk about the likes of Oklahoma and Notre Dame and maybe even a surprise UCLA, where is Ohio State going to find their spot? So they can't slip.
They just have to win.
They can't. That's right. They can't afford to slip. So when I say nobody's
like
writing them off, or I wouldn't write them off, I mean there are people out there right now that are looking and probably saying, you know what, I think there's a little bit too immaturity there. These teams like Texas A&M, Oklahoma, they may make it too hard for them to squeeze in there, being the team that they are, being the young team that they are. But don't get me wrong, I still have all the faith in the world in Ryan Day and all the faith in the world in that talented roster. I mean, it's so deep all the way 2 and 3 players deep. One guy goes out, like you said, you wouldn't have even known. I mean, the defense didn't play their best game, but you wouldn't have known both starting cornerbacks were out just based on how they played.
Right.
So the talent is there. They have the talent to make up for the mistakes whenever they're out of position on the field. So
you know what?
Go ahead.
No, Eddie, you know what? And I agree with you on that. And the thing they have to do is, again, on the defense side of the ball, they have to be more stout on the defense side of the ball against the run, because these good running backs just always seem to gash them. And they always seem to rely on the offense and the offensive exploits of Ryan Day and these skilled receivers and these skilled running backs to bail them out. Now, of course, you don't have the Bosa brothers and you don't have Chase Young. Zach Harrison, who was very highly recruited. I like the fact that he got that strip sack. I hope that gets him going because he has the talent to be that guy. They're going to have to find a consistent pass rush, and the defensive backs are going to have to grow up quick. I mean, you're putting first-rounders in the NFL every single year. But I think the Buckeyes will be just fine. I think we can run the table this year. Again, you can't take any nights off. And I thought that first game was a good learning experience for them. I thought it was good to go against a formidable opponent that first game. Now you're going against an Oregon team who I wish the top player in the nation, Thibodeau, what's his name, Trayvon Thibodeau?
Yes.
I wish he was actually playing. Now, he may be out with an ankle injury because I don't want any excuses. Because my thing was, anytime we play Oregon, the thing we do, and what I said about if Thibodeau does play and if he would have played, lean on him. Lean on him with that big, brutal offensive line, and don't run away from him, because if you let him play in space, he's going to cause havoc and he's going to wreck shop. So my thing was, and it still is against Oregon, lean on them, let them know that they're coming to play big boy football, and they're just not going to run around there and have their way. The same thing we did to them a few years ago in the playoffs. I mean, use that physicality on Oregon, be heavy in the run game, bust them with some big plays in the pass game like I know they're going to do, but wear them down physically. And if Thibodeau plays, and if he would have played, that would have been my thing. It's not, oh, don't go toward Thibodeau. No, go at his ass all day, make him play, make him work, and wear him down. Because if you let him play in space, he's going to wreck shop.
Well, it's no secret, Greg. I mean, you look at every level of football, and you look at dominant defensive ends or edge rushers or contains, and if you've got one guy the likes of a Thibodeau or a guy that we watched for a long time here in Houston, like J.J. Watt.
And Thibodeau's a bad boy,
how do offenses attack guys like that? Because guys like that are really aggressive. They get off the ball fast. They make splash plays. So how do you attack a guy like that? By going right at him and hoping that he's over-aggressive and you catch him out of position. And when you do that, you're able to bust big plays, and particularly in the run game. I mean, we saw it for years.
And in the screen game.
They'll run at J.J. Watt. And, yeah, he's going to get his TFLs, but the one time you catch him going for thinking that it's a pass, and you catch him on that draw play and he hits for 25, that's whenever you're taking advantage of a really talented player just being out of position and being over-aggressive. You're right. That's exactly how you have to attack that defense, because if you try to run away from him just by design,
he's gonna wreck shop.
By design, what happens to the guy off the end by design if you're running the other way? He doesn't get blocked. You have to unblock one guy, so you unblock the edge guy on the backside. Usually what happens when those guys are really talented and athletic. I mean, think about Khalil Mack. barreling down the line, and shutting a play down from the backside because he was unblocked. We've seen it all the time here in Houston with JJ. You can't run away from those types of guys, not when they're that explosive. You absolutely cannot unblock them.
Absolutely.
So,
and to your point about being over aggressive, then also if he plays, or anybody on that team is going to utilize their speed and think they're going to get around these big holes on the offensive line, if they get too aggressive or whatever, dump the ball to Henderson, best running back in the nation last year, and let him do his thing. Dump the ball to Williams, let him do his thing. And you gash him like that. But you use that physicality on Oregon this week and go at them. Now, of course, Oregon, on the offensive side of the ball, they're going to feel that they can get some things accomplished against that Ohio State defense. Again, the Ohio State defense, as talented as they are, they have to tighten up in the run game and quit giving up these big plays in the passing game and depending on the offense to bail them out. So hopefully that happens this week. But, Eddie, you know what? Also stand on college football for a second. Of course, we're going to talk a lot of NFL football, absolutely.
If we could just get past the Buckeyes,
if we could just get past the Buckeyes,
we'll talk NFL.
That was the game to open up the season.
And guess who's opening up the NFL season?
Yeah, the Cowboys. This upcoming Thursday. So we're going to talk about that. Of course, we're going to talk about the Texans, Tyrod Taylor being named the starter. Looks like Deshaun Watson may really be on the outs all season. We'll see how that plays out moving forward. But staying with college football for a second, Eddie, Alabama. Like I've been saying the past few weeks in here all along, it's Alabama. Now, we can talk about the top four all we want. I like the way Georgia looks. They look very good on defense. But Alabama, it's Alabama and everyone else. Bryce Young threw for 344 yards, 4 touchdowns. And when I was talking about Bama, when I was forecasting what Bama was going to look like, I never had any doubt in my mind that Bryce Young was going to hit the ground running because, of course, he's that talented of a quarterback, for one. And for two, he's playing at Bama. He's playing with all that talent around him. And so I could not see him getting off to a slow start. It's just too many weapons around him. Think about that number one. That number one for Alabama right there. He played for the Buckeyes last year. And this guy right here, Williams, he's a monster. Now, he was number 6 for the Buckeyes last year, right? He was number 6.
What happened?
You have Garrett Wilson, and you have Chris Olave. I was surprised last year that they didn't use Jameson Williams more in the past game. Now, he scored that touchdown against Clemson, that long touchdown against Clemson, number 6. But I thought even during the course of last season, I always thought this dude is too talented not to play him. I don't know what was going on in practice or what. But for him to go to Bama, not only did he transfer, he said, I'm transferring to Bama, and I'm going to be probably their best receiver. Of course, they have Mechie and these guys. And then he had the audacity to go in there and say, not only am I transferring to Bama, Coach Saban, let me wear number 1. He had a 94-yard touchdown, took it to the house, speed demon. I didn't even know he had transferred into that game. I'm like, that's what Jameson Williams is.
Yeah, he transferred to a real program.
Well, you know what? I can't sit there and argue the fact that he transferred to.
Ryan Day? Take a look down in Tuscaloosa.
But you know what? That's what's so funny about it, though. It's like not only did he transfer from Ohio State, who's probably going to be back in the playoffs again, he transferred to the best college in the nation, and they were able to see that talent. I don't see what Ryan Day didn't see in him, where he didn't play him as much as, he should have played more than that last year. Now, of course, he still makes some big plays, but you can't let Jameson Williams get away like that. And not only did he transfer to Bama, who's predicted to win it all again, so he's like, I'm going to transfer a team where I'm probably going to win a national championship, and it's probably going to help me be a first rounder because I'm going to do what I did in the first game. I'm going to do that all year and just bust big play after big play after big play. So Jameson Williams looks good. Alabama, the defense looks tremendous, and Bama looks like Bama, bro.
Is anybody really surprised?
Not really. Not at all.
It's funny because we talk about teams like Ohio State, and we wonder, how their guys are gonna handle, filling big shoes, the shoes of players that were drafted in the first round. Between those two schools, what was it last year? 11 or 12 first rounders just between those two schools. That's insane. But there's big shoes to fill, and you see some teams around the nation, Clemson, sometimes Ohio State, you see them struggle with that, but for whatever reason, Alabama just keeps on chugging along. They never miss a beat like just a well-oiled machine. I don't think Saban's ever
They're a
going to leave
machine.
Alabama.
Huh?
I don't think he's ever going to leave Alabama.
Why should he have to?
I don't.
Probably doesn't have to pay for a meal. I mean, he just sits there. They just reload every year and they just keep it coming, bro. They just keep it coming. Now the thing, Miami. I mean, they still. Are the Miami Hurricanes ever going to get back to their glory
They were
days?
no match, and Derek King just looked like he clearly. He was a big fish.
He's a free safety in the pros,
He was a
bro.
big fish in a small pond
Yes.
at the quarterback position
Yes.
when he was playing at U of H.
I'm not too
And now
impressed as a quarterback in the pros.
I couldn't understand why, he thought that was going to be a better move for him. I just didn't see it. I thought, the competition in the ACC, for him to go over there and think he's just going to take that conference by storm, I just didn't see it happening. And clearly, they're not off to a good start. But,
Right.
I mean, they were facing the best team.
They were facing Bama,
in
so let's
the
see what they
entire
look like
land.
from here on out. Right,
Yeah.
right. And moving on, but Bama is Bama. Miami still looks like Miami. I mean, we'll see. But, of course, like you just said, and like I even gave them the benefit of the doubt watching that game, it's like, okay, Bama is just that damn good. I mean, they are for real.
Okay, and then,
for real,
well,
for
how
real.
about this? Is this the year that Georgia actually lives up to the hype? Because there's been a handful of years. We go back through, the last 5, 6, 7 years. There's been a handful of years where Georgia's billed as that team that's going to be able to take that
Right.
thing from Alabama. It's all going to come down to the SEC championship between those two teams. And it seems like every one of those years, Georgia seems to let us down. And the one year they didn't, they get to the national championship, and what happens? They're not able to seal the deal.
Yeah. And they should have won that. Right, they should have won that game.
Is
if
this,
it wasn't for the exploits
Greg,
of Tua.
is this the year, as good as Alabama is, stealing top-tier talent from Ohio State and all that, is this the year that Georgia's able to get over that hump and finally bring home a national championship? Because, doggone it, they look good.
Well, I'll say this. I'm not going to bet
And
against
they are
Bama.
stacked.
Yes, they are. They look damn good. And I'm not going to bet against Bama right now. If I had to bet right now, I would say no because Bama is just that good. But the defense of Georgia looks damn good. Now, if JT Daniels can continue to evolve and if he can be the player that we know he can be, the player that he was part of his freshman year at USC, I mean, they have a strong chance because Georgia recruits well. I mean, they recruit like Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, LSU, and we're going to talk about them in a second too. But Georgia has a legitimate shot of getting into the playoffs this year. Yes, they do. They do.
No, I'm just laughing because my brother commented. He said, Greg looks like he needs a Whopper.
He knows about me and those Whoppers. Huh? Hey, tell him I do. But hey, man, I'm telling you, Georgia looks damn good now. They were playing against a team in Clemson, and anytime someone can shut up Dabo Swinney and shut his trap, I'm all for it. Ever since he said last year about Ohio State doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs and all this and that, and don't get me wrong, he seems like a great guy, but Ohio State is a team that's arrogant, though. Remember that. Ohio State is a team that's arrogant. How can anyone be more arrogant than Dabo Swinney? So anytime somebody can shut his trap, I'm all for it. And I was glad Georgia was able to do that. And the defense looks awesome at Georgia. Looks awesome. Now, of course, and they don't even have their best receiver back. I think his name is George Thomas, the number 1. But they don't even have him back. But when they get him back, just imagine. But, of course, the talent is there. The defensive intensity of Georgia and that physicality, I can see them definitely competing with Bama in that championship game. But I think the difference in that game would probably be Bryce Young and, again, Jamison Williams and those skilled receivers for Bama. I just think they would just make too many big plays, and they will offset some of that physicality that Georgia's going to bring. And I don't know if Georgia, now maybe when they get the full complement of wide receivers back, then we will see. But, hey,
Definitely
Georgia
setting
looks
up
good.
some big matchups later on in the year.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Now, Clemson, real quick, before I get your take on UCLA, Clemson, real quick, I've said this for the last couple of years. Even during their glory days, even when, and it still may be their glory days, they may get it back together. That was a bad loss for them. They were playing against the number 5 team in the nation, or it was 3 against 5. So, offense is too vanilla. They have no one that actually scares you. Now, of course, you had Trevor Lawrence, you had Travis Etienne. Now you have Justin Ross back, and great job by him of getting back after that terrible spinal cord injury, disc injury. So he's back, And kudos to him for getting back, working very hard to get back when some thought he would never play football again. So I commend him for that. But he's not a guy that really scares you in the passing game as far as taking the top off of defense, even though he's a long strider and he can go get it. But they have no one who can scare you in the passing game. And everyone has always praised all this hype and all this praise on Elliott, their offense coordinator, and I just don't see it. I've never seen the creativity. I've never seen the innovation. If it wasn't for the exploits of Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne and some of those guys, I just don't see it in Clemson.
Are usually a fantastic defense run by Brent Venables too. Don't forget. I mean, usually
the defense is always going to be there.
Usually they are top notch.
Yeah. The defense is always.
It makes things a lot easier whenever you're putting 2 or 3 guys in the NFL every year.
Right, and
off that defensive line.
Right. And dude, DJ Uyagalelele.
That's
Did I pronounce that right?
Close.
Okay.
Close.
Uyagalelele. I hope I pronounced that right. Maybe I didn't. And next week I will if I didn't. But this guy here, he's going to be good. But Georgia was just too much for him in that first game. And again, they have no one at the skill positions that really scare you. And then to go along with the lack of innovation and creativity as far as the play calling is concerned, I was happy to see Clemson go down like that because of Dabo Swinney. But hey, speaking of defense, Eddie.
Well, I mean, real quick before we move on, the one thing about Clemson, and the years that they've been really, really good, they've had that stud quarterback. They had Trevor Lawrence, they had Deshaun Watson. You think about the Kelly Bryant years. Not as they had success, not as much success, and I know there's the talented guy whose name is very difficult to say. I'm not going to butcher it. We only butcher a name one time here on the Sports Court.
I think that's right, though. I think
that. Yeah, you're pretty close. But to me, he's maybe I'm wrong, but to me, he's a tier below those guys, the likes of the Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, and it's going to show throughout the season, and they're going to have to figure out a way to make up for it. And if they can't, as you already saw right out of the gate, they're going to be down a tier or two as this thing gets rolling along. I mean, yeah, like you mentioned,
and the ACC, they were terrible this past weekend.
Yeah, their offense has been good from year to year, but when you just have that, I don't want to be too hard on, but like pedestrian play from the quarterback position, a guy who really doesn't excite you with his playmaking ability, you're going to see his Clemson team be rather lackluster. Still win a lot of football games, but we're not talking about.
They may run the table.
We're not talking about a playoff. I don't think we're talking about a playoff team in Clemson.
Well, the fact that their conference looked so bad this past weekend, that didn't help them at all.
They need to go steal some players from Ohio State like Alabama.
We don't want to. None of our players going to Clemson. But you know what? We'll see what happens. Of course, they're going to run the table in that conference, but I think the way the conference performed as a whole this past weekend, that definitely doesn't help them because it's not going to help their strength of schedule moving forward. Now, of course, there's still a lot of season left, and a lot has to play out. Yeah. And again, I'm going to see what my Buckeyes do this weekend. I know I'm speaking highly of them. The talent is there. You have to beat Oregon, get into that Big Ten conference schedule. Again, you're going to have some teams that's going to be gunning for you. Michigan looks better. Let's see what Harbaugh does moving forward. But I like what I'm seeing from Chip Kelly in Pasadena right now.
Yeah, the biggest surprise of the weekend probably was Chip Kelly, and maybe it shouldn't have been. But damn, could we be talking about UCLA being like the Ducks were back when he was running the show?
Yeah.
Because if they're going to be that explosive on offense, and he's going to be having defensive coordinators flipping their headsets off and going through notes from years past trying to figure out how the hell they're going to stop this team.
Yeah.
Man, it's going to get exciting later on. And like you mentioned, Greg, if there's a heavy load of SEC teams competing for those playoff spots, you're getting maybe two, possibly 3 SEC teams. That leaves a whole lot of other conferences fighting and jockeying for that final position. And if you get a stud team from the Pac-12, I mean, we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but let's say they run the table. Man, that's going to make it real hard for somebody else to squeeze in there. So all eyes are going to be on Chip Kelly, and UCLA could be the Cinderella team of the entire season.
Hey, you know what? I totally agree about UCLA, man. They are actually impressive up to this point. Now, of course, the first game they beat Hawaii down 44-10. And I think right now what I'm noticing with UCLA, sweet uniforms, by the way, sweet uniforms. New unis. I mean, The culture has changed there. Now, of course, they have a lot of veteran players. Now, they haven't won a Pac-12 championship in 23 years, but veteran-laden roster. 16 players are in grad school, 18 graduates. But these guys are listening to Chip Kelly now. Now he's starting to see how the players that he's recruited, the players that he recruited when he first got there, now he's seen them grow and they're buying into the system. But I think the difference in this UCLA team and his Oregon teams were more predicated on speed and just outrunning people. This team right here at UCLA looks physical. They look very physical on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, they gave LSU all kinds of problems. Max Johnson, who's Brad Johnson's son, sacked him 3 times. And speaking of LSU real quick, LSU, they always have a lot of talent, but always seem to be lacking a quarterback other than Burrow. Now, I don't want to really say that about Max Johnson right this second. He did ultimately throw 3 touchdowns, but just watching that game, I'm saying to myself, okay, where's that big-time quarterback talent? Now, he may turn out to be, but it's LSU every year other than Burrow. It's like they're just lacking a quarterback, a big-time quarterback to go along with all that talent, all those skill position players. It always seems like they're just lacking that big-time quarterback. But UCLA, that physicality right now, what they've been displaying these last 2 games, I mean, Chip Kelly has those guys rolling right now, and I'm very, very, very impressed. And they're disciplined. They're very disciplined. So looking forward to seeing what they continue to do for the remainder of the season. And also, Eddie, real quick.
And before we move on away from LSU, and I do want to touch on a little bit about UCLA, and then I'll talk about LSU. UCLA, you mentioned, looks like a little bit of different style, a little bit of a different style for Chip Kelly, a guy who sort of made his name being a finesse type of coach, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to finesse our way. We're going to use smaller offensive line. We're going to use smaller backs.
Speed, right.
We're going to use speed. Yeah, we're going to go tempo. And he's still going to do those types of things. However, I think being in the NFL and coaching at that level, he really got a good dose of, you only are as strong as you are in the trenches. Mm-hmm. That's your weakest link. If
that's
you're
where the
weak
game is
up
won, in
front,
the trenches.
On the defensive or offensive line, teams are going to expose you. And I think adding the ability of him to make sure that he's got that part of his roster taken care of, because they were dominant on the offensive line. I mean, downright dominant, firing off the ball. You or I could have had 150 yards rushing behind that offensive line.
Physical.
If he brings that type of, or adds that type of physicality to the finesse style that he's mastered so well, then there's big things on the horizon for UCLA, and they could be one of those surprise teams getting into the college football playoff.
Absolutely.
Now LSU, what I wanted to say, yeah, they do seem like they're always that quarterback away. But for me, I want to take it a step further. It's not just the quarterback. They are an coordinator away. They are missing
coaching. They're
missing Mr. Brady. They are missing they're missing Joe Burrow. But like we've mentioned before, Joe Burrow wasn't Joe Burrow until you got Brady.
Right.
All right. And now you're seeing them struggle on offense because Ed Orgeron can't get the right guy.
Right.
In the position.
He's a rah-rah guy.
Even though who's the guy now? Is it Peavy? I think his name is the offensive coordinator for them now. He had one season under Brady, but clearly, I don't know if he just wants to do his own thing. He's not going to do the same thing that Brady's doing, and it doesn't look like it's working. And their quarterback looks like he's struggling. So to me, I'm not so sure it's the talent at the position, because I think it's there. I think it's more about the coaching, and all of this is all falling at the feet of Ed Orgeron, who could find himself. If we're talking about another LSU loss within the next few weeks, he could find himself on a hot seat or sitting on a seat that heats up real quick.
Absolutely.
Because I think of all coaches real quick in the SEC, he's the one that's more of just like the rah-rah guy. I don't know what else he adds to it than just a face and a lovable personality.
Great recruiter.
Yeah, he's a great recruiter. But other than that, I don't think he's heavily involved in the game plan or the strategy week to week on how they're going to attack offenses or defenses prospectively.
Go on, get them, guys.
So when you've got a coach like that, that gets kind of tired after a while, and they're going to want to get somebody in there with fresh eyes and a fresh mind, and somebody who's going to be giving them some input on one side of the ball or the other, rather than a guy. If you're going to stand back and be sort of a puppeteer, or a marionette master like the likes of Saban are, you better make sure you're hiring the right guys. Because if you're not, you're going to find yourself out on your ass real quick. And that looks like that's where Ed Orgeron could be heading real soon.
Yeah, because a lot of people did not want to hire him as a head coach because of exactly what you're saying. Is he really an X's and O type of guy? Where they knew he was a great recruiter. They knew he was a rah-rah type of guy.
But is that enough in the
Is
SEC?
that enough if you're not hiring the right coordinators? I mean, again, they're always in the top 5 to 7 in recruiting every year. I mean, if you look at Derek Stingley Jr., he's going to be a top 5 draft pick, the best cornerback in the game. I mean, he is special. He is special as a defensive back. They have talent everywhere, but it's just always something missing creativity-wise. I mean, their offense is always vanilla, other than when Brady was there. If you go all the way back to Les Miles, even though Les Miles was able to get them a national championship, got to give them credit for that. But they were never able to really make that offensive talent and those skill position players really shine. So the talent is there. And I'm not giving up on LSU. I mean, again, they may run the table and they may end up coming out of the SEC.
Right.
But they ran into a juggernaut in Chip Kelly, the way he has that team rolling right now. And Chip Kelly's looking good at UCLA. That team is looking very good right now, very physical, and they can thump.
Correction, it is Jake Peets, not PV. Peets.
Okay,
he's the offensive coordinator.
Pete
and
something.
they also, Bo Pelini, no longer the defensive coordinator there. You know,
My
it's
ex-college
Durante
teammate,
Jones
Bo Pelini.
is now the defense. That's crazy, man. You old, bro.
Hey, man. Nothing but a
You
number, bro.
Oh, man, Bo Pelini.
This guy puts a premium
Damn.
age. Man, I'm as young as they come, my man.
And now Durante Jones taking over with the defensive play calling duties and as the defensive coordinator for the Tigers. You mentioned, I keep wanting to call him Byron Stingley Jr., but it's not Byron Stingley Jr. It's
Derek Stingley.
There you go. Even with all his talent, he still had moments where he looked out of place and unable to make tackles while that I want to say Ducks because I'm thinking about Chip Kelly, while that Bruins offense was running all over them. But like you mentioned, like we just talked about, talent and coaching. There's a disconnect there, and I wonder when heads are going to start to roll and what's going to happen, where LSU goes from here, because I can't imagine they sit around and watch this deteriorate much longer. Not when you know that all it takes is having the right guy calling the plays, and you're going to compete for a national championship because the talent's there.
Absolutely, I agree.
There's
Eddie.
plenty
I
of
agree.
players
The
to go around in
talent
the
is there.
SEC. They're not even afraid of adding Texas and Oklahoma because they know there's plenty of talent to go around.
Okay, before we move on to the NFL, now we had a heavy dose of college football, of course, but we have plenty of time. Stay with us. We're going to talk a lot of NFL. And speaking of UT, now I didn't watch the entire game, but from what I could see with UT, it seems like Sarkisian has them going in the right direction as well. I just like the energy they were playing with, and you know they've always had the talent. So let's see what kind of consistency they have moving forward. I was talking to a friend of mine. She actually went to the University of Texas, and she's a big-time sports fan. And she said, okay, well, let's see. You know, they start out like this every season, and let's see. But I just saw something different with their attitude. I saw something different with their attitude this past Saturday against Louisiana, who used to be called Southwestern Louisiana, team that recruited me when I was in college. Coach West. He was trying to flirt with my mom, as a matter of fact. But now they're called Louisiana. But
the Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns.
Raging Cajuns. But I like what I'm seeing from Sark, and I just like what I'm seeing from them as a whole as far as that. Well, you know the talent is there.
It certainly, I mean, they get off to a good start by getting a W in the books. I was watching that game through the first quarter, and it looked like Louisiana, as some inferior teams will do, they'll come out and be running on adrenaline, and they'll really, you know, it'll look like it's going to be a much closer game than it's going to be in the end. I think through the first half, it ended up being a 14-6 ball game, so still a one-possession game, and it had me thinking, man, Texas really should be handling them a lot better than they are now. But then you think about the coaching change, you think about trying to bring a new attitude, you know, and a new identity to the Longhorns. And so you got to give them credit for, you know, nip and tucking throughout the first half, but then really getting things together in the second half. The defense played really well, pretty much the entire ball game. You know, so we wonder about how that Steve Sarkisian offense is going to go. Really well whenever you've got an all-world talent all around you. Now, we know UT has good talent, but certainly they don't have the depth that an Alabama does, or they don't have it stacked the way an Alabama does. So we'll see how Sark does with that. But you got to give him credit for getting the W, and I think that he's learned a lot from the mistakes he made at SC, and you know, by being able to coach underneath Saban, I think he's learned a whole lot. We'll see. I know Longhorns fans are happy. I still would like to see a little bit more. I think when you're dealing with a guy like Sark, he's got experience at every level, NFL, college. There's a lot he can add to this program, and if he really dedicates himself and implements in a system that he's perfected throughout the mistakes that he's made, or from the mistakes that he's made throughout those levels at the NFL, in Atlanta and here, or I should say Atlanta and at Alabama.
Alabama, right.
Then, man, we could see all of a sudden a UT team that hasn't been talked about in national, about national championships or in that breath since the Vince Young era. Then we could be talking about them like that. But UT, they really got a long way to go to me before they're even talked about on that level or even considered on that level.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have to live up to the hype. And again, I like their energy, and I just like the way it's just something different about them. It seems like Sark, again, with all that experience that you speak of, it just seems like it's something different about UT now. Because my thing with UT ever since Mac Brown has left, of course they recruit in Texas, so they've always had the blue chip talent. But it seems like every time that talent gets to UT, it just halts. Like, they don't get better. They don't evolve as players. And they never really bring the best out of their players. And hopefully Sarkisian is able to do that. And when you see those guys go to UT and they're highly recruited, you can see them actually evolve and get better, get coached up while they're at UT.
Well, Texas was always one of those teams. Sorry to interrupt, Greg.
No, go ahead.
They were always one of those teams that were constantly putting players in the NFL. And we've seen that really taper back over the last several years, where it used to be every year, UT was at the top, with Alabama, other teams in the SEC, Ohio State, with players being put in the NFL. And now, not so much. I mean, you get guys that are late-round draft picks, but I'm talking about them premium picks, first-round guys, second-round guys.
Right.
When you think about the likes of Michael, what was I going to call him? Michael Thomas, not Michael Thomas. Earl Thomas. Earl Thomas, the defensive backs that he used to put into the NFL year after year, and offensive players they put in Jordan Shipley's of the world year after year. It seemed like, and all the running backs, Charles and the whole likes of them,
Right. Jamal.
But what happened to that? I mean, I know there's guys in the NFL that played for Texas, but I think I'm racking my brain, and the only one that comes to mind is Connor Williams. That's crazy.
He was a second rounder.
That's crazy. It shouldn't be like that when you're supposed to be the premier program in the state. I mean, growing up, Texas A&M, I mean, I don't know. I'm just speaking for myself. Growing up, to me, Texas A&M was kind of like a distant second, while UT was sort of the school that most of the state embraced, that wasn't an alumni either here, there, or the other, They embraced UT. And everybody, I mean, when I was a kid, we all talked about we want to play for the Longhorns whenever we grow up. They had that swag. And since the Johnny Manziel days, since Mac Brown has moved on, Johnny Manziel went to A&M. Ever since then, I felt like, and A&M moved to the SEC, they've stolen that swag away from UT. A&M is the premier program in this state now. And I think Sark
and
really,
they're playing in the SEC. That's why UT wants to go to the SEC.
I think Sark, and I bet you he started talking that up as soon as he got there too. Get me in the SEC as well. Because that opens even more recruiting doors.
Absolutely.
Because you're definitely gonna have a lot more nationally televised games.
More money.
Not just playing on the old Longhorn network.
Right. More money. Absolutely.
But he's got an opportunity to really build something special here, man. And there's a whole lot. If you do, I mean, think about the money that can be made when UT is good. That university can really take off and go. Who knows how high? Hey. Because I mean, the boosters get excited. They start spending money. But the winning just hasn't been there, man.
I agree.
It hasn't been there. It's up to Sark to change
it. Ever since Vince Young, and I think Sark is on the right path now. They have Arkansas coming up this upcoming weekend, September the 11th. And speaking of Arkansas, real quick before we move on, because I want to get your take real quick on Notre Dame, Florida State too. Just for a second. We have plenty of time left. But speaking of Arkansas, speaking of Ohio State, when I went to Ohio State 1988, we actually drove to Columbus, Ohio, me, my dad, and my grandfather. First year we went up there, Eddie, had to report to camp. I remember it was August the 15th, had to report to camp, and left to go out there on the road trip. My grandfather's truck stopped in Nacogdoches, between Lufkin and Nacogdoches. So someone directed us to a guy. Now, this guy at the time, I can't remember his name, but I remember his face. He was like 80 at the time. This was 1988. So, of course, he's no longer around, I would like to think. I mean, if he is around, he's a special type of guy. But fuel pump went out. Had to get that fixed. Got on up there. But moving fast forward, and then actually, Eddie, when we went up there, we went through. The reason I bring that up about Arkansas because we went through Arkansas, Tennessee, Kentucky, Louisville, who just got beat last night, got beat down by Ole Miss, even though Lane Kiffin wasn't there. But the next year we went out there, it was me and my dad in my car. I was supposed to take my car back there. I'm going to take my car my sophomore year. I'm going to take my car out there. Finally, I can take my car my sophomore year. Get in Arkansas in the middle of nowhere, pitch black. I'm talking about over in the morning, 2, 3 in the morning, pitch black. And when I talk about in the middle of nowhere, I'm talking about in the middle of nowhere. Nothing passing by but 18-wheelers. Zoom, zoom. My car stops on the side of the road. Nobody but me and my dad in the car. Stops on the side of the road. I'm talking about out of there. Stops on the side of the road. And, hey, man, when I tell you we sat on the side of the road all night, if someone wanted to come do what they wanted to do with us and take us in those woods. But then again, I take that back. My dad had a 38 special for him in the car, so I don't know if that would have happened. but on my way, we go through Arkansas, and that's what happened. So then the next day, all of a sudden the next morning, the car starts up. So instead of driving all the way to Ohio, going through Arkansas and Tennessee and Kentucky and all this and that, we decided to take that car back to Houston. Then I caught a flight out there and paid the next day. But when I say Arkansas, every time I think about Arkansas, I think about that. And we were on our way to Columbus. Both years, my first 2 years, that's what happened on the way there. But that's just a little blast from the past right there. Hey, but what do you think about, before we talk NFL, Eddie, what do you think about real quick Notre Dame, Florida State? Is Florida State are they on the comeback trail?
I don't know, man. It's tough. It's really going to be tough for them. I feel like too many kids are choosing to go elsewhere, and if they're going to go in the ACC, they're going to want to go to Clemson. I mean, you got to figure out how to do more with a little bit less talent. I mean, let's just be honest. And I'm not so sure Florida State's ready to make that turn. Whenever they were,
Well, has them looking good now. They look good the other night, even though they lost.
I
wish they could have won that game. I really wish.
We'll see. Back in the day, whenever they were a perennial powerhouse, there was a reason for that, and that's because they were killing it. They were killing it with the recruiting class. Yeah. And it's just right now, it's just so tough. It's tough for them because they haven't had the winning culture that they may have had in the past under the late Bowden.
Well, they had Bowden and at Doak Campbell Field, and of course Bowden missed wide left. Dadgummit. You see Bowden, he talking to the guy that's interviewing me, lean back. Well, if we would have made that kick, wouldn't you reckon that we would have won that game? But miss Bobby Bowden, man. I mean, that guy there. So may he rest in peace. But you know what I saw from Norvell? I saw a team that's playing with their hair on fire now. Of course, the offensive line needs to get better because the quarterbacks are running for their life. I like the fact that Mackenzie Milton, he's come back. He's come back after that devastating knee injury a few years ago. Transferred to Florida State, obviously, and it's going to be interesting to see who they actually incorporate as a starting quarterback. They have a two-quarterback system, but I think they're probably going to let Mackenzie Milton take over that job more than not. Now, of course, with that knee injury, he's going to have to be able to elude those defenders because the offensive line does not look good. But I like what I'm seeing from the energy. I like what I'm seeing for as energy-wise as far as Florida State is concerned. So it's kind of unfortunate they didn't win that game because even though they played their hearts out against a Notre Dame team that actually, I saw some holes in their game. I mean, a nice running game. I think that running back Williams, he runs side to side way too much. I think he sets up his blockers way too long instead of actually hitting the hole. I think he dances too much, as good as he is. But I can see Florida State making a turnaround, and I can see them being competitive this year. Again, they have to start out 0-1, so we'll see. But I like the energy. Yeah. Of course, the talent is going to be there. Even if they're not getting the top-tier players in Florida at this point, it's actually Florida that they're recruiting in. So
where everybody wants to go play for the Gators. I'm just messing with you.
Everyone wants to go play for the Gators, and Miami's still getting some people now. Yeah. And so we shall see, man. We shall see. But
Notre Dame, with them, they've got some really good opponents on their schedule this season. Mm-hmm. So, they're definitely a team that everybody every year looks to make a run at one of those playoff positions. Them not, being an independent, they can pretty much schedule who they want. They do have teams on their schedule that, aren't going to be able to contend with them, the likes of Toledo and Navy. Mm-hmm. But there's some big games that they're going to play, Wisconsin's a big one, and then Cincinnati. I mean, that's going to be
Yeah.
a really tough test.
Luke
at
Fickell,
a
Ohio
very
State.
well coached Cincinnati team. And so they've got their work cut out for them. There's no cakewalk to a top, 10 or top 5 spot, I should
Absolutely.
say, in
I
college
like
football
what Jack
rankings
Cohn-
for Notre Dame. Like maybe there has been in the past.
Yeah. Well,
It's
I
not
like what
gonna
Jack
happen
Cohn
like
was
that
able to
this
do,
year.
throwing 4 touchdowns, a transfer from Wisconsin. So they have some talent on the team. But, of course, if you listen to Brian Kelly, they should have been executed. And
Oh,
you know
that's what I wanted to bring up, too. We'll see how they do, post-execution.
I think, man, the media,
Moving on to
when
the
he
game
said that,
against Toledo.
when he said that, I said to myself, watch they make a big deal out of that. I mean, bro, the society, us as a society these days are just too damn sensitive, man. Keep it in the proper context. If you listen to the guy's comments, you knew he was joking. That's why I'm glad when he came and clarified his comments, he didn't necessarily apologize. He still was kind of like, you guys took that seriously? I mean, when he said it, it was obvious it was a joke. I promise you when he said it, I said to myself, watch tomorrow. He catches a lot of flack because of that. And that shouldn't have been the case, man. I mean, damn.
You can
Get
find
over it.
something wrong in what a lot of people say, but I tell you what, it is.
That was nothing. You have to keep it in the proper context.
It's a different day and age because
It is. That's my point.
I mean, I used to
It's
have
sad.
a coach in high school that would tell me, playing cornerback, Cox, if you look into the backfield and man coverage, I swear I'm gonna take you on the other side of the track and have you shot. But you don't take that literally. Coach is just ticked off because you're not executing properly.
Can't
you're
even
not
coach
doing
like
the
that
right
these
job.
days.
Yeah, you can't do that these days because
that Woody Hayes style of coaching and all
right,
this and that.
and
Mo
because
Schembechler.
with the things that have gone on in the world today, with school shootings and stuff like that, and how controversial things are, you just can't say anything that anybody might misinterpret like that. Because the one time that you think somebody's playing, they say some crazy stuff like that, and then it happens. Not saying that would happen.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
That's why they just say there's no room to
But
say
that's
it
their
at all.
excuse.
Right.
That's their excuse to say, well, we don't know what you meant. But anybody that was listening to Brian Kelly after that game, anyone with any semblance of a brain would know that guy was joking. I mean, to blow that out of proportion was just, it was crazy in my opinion. Hey, but moving on to the NFL, my man.
But you got to be aware. Can't say that.
Yeah, well,
At least not in the press conference, Greg. You can't say it in the press
I
conference.
agree that you always can't say what's on your mind, but in a situation like that,
Execute.
I don't see where that's a big deal because again, the way I would look at it is, okay, what context is he putting it in? Again, anybody in their right mind know the guy is joking.
Yeah.
If you're gonna make a big deal out of that,
Yeah.
you're just trying to find something to make a big deal out of.
Yeah,
And
well,
people need to get over themselves, man.
That's the media, man. Find
It's
something to
sad.
make a big deal out of.
You're right. Sensationalize everything. It is sad. Hey, but you know what? Before we talk about the Cowboys,
Oh,
the
Cowboys have to
Texans-
be open this season as well.
the Texans, it's gonna be a lot of Cowboys talk all year. Y'all know that. A lot of Ohio State talk.
Well, we're
Y'all
certainly
know
going to
that.
break down that matchup. That is one of the premier matchups in the NFL opening week, and it's going to kick the whole damn thing off on Thursday night. That being the Bucks versus the Cowboys.
But you know what?
But go ahead, mention
I
what you were
want to
going
get
to
your
say
take about
the.
Tyrod Taylor and the Texans. What do you think? They're playing Jacksonville this week. Urban Meyer. How do you see that game shaking out? Now the fact that they've named Tyrod Taylor the starter, for one, I know that doesn't surprise you.
No,
And
not at all.
How do you think that game is going to play out?
This is probably analyzing this game. You think, why would you want to? But being a fan of the Texans, I'm going to keep a close eye on them throughout the entire season.
This is our Texans insider right here, folks.
The thing about it is, I'm hearing mixed reviews coming out of Jacksonville about Urban Meyer and how his style of coaching is being accepted, as opposed to, the way things have been done in the past. Jacksonville's had issues with their coaches like that in the past when they had, it wasn't even their coach. They had Coughlin, way back when. And then when he came back sort of as a front office guy, there were some of those issues, with the type or the coaching style of coaches like that, the totalitarian emperor style, the rule with an iron fist. Herb's kind of that guy. Hearing mixed reviews about how it's being accepted. Fact of the matter,
more of a player's coach. Now he has a player coach mentality.
the fact of the matter is, if they're winning, it's going to be easier for for players to buy into that.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I just don't know how that's going to affect their performance on the field. Roster-wise, talent-wise, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars should win. I think Trevor Lawrence, even being a rookie, should be able to go out there and do enough with what he has to score more points than what I think is going to be a lackluster and borderline putrid Houston Texans offense. what made the Texans good on offense when they were good or when they had success was Deshaun Watson's ability to really open things up and improvise on the fly. You're not going to get that with Tyrod Taylor. So you got to hope he's going to execute this sort of nickel and dime deke and dunk offense that's going to have a really strong running game. I don't see that being any type of template for success long term at all or throughout the course of a season. I think there's going to be certainly some opportunities for the Jacksonville Jaguars to rush Tyrod Taylor and put him in some precarious situations. I know the offensive line has played better, but Marcus Cannon, who's going to be their starting right tackle, who they just activated back onto the active roster, hasn't had a lot of work this offseason, so you don't know if he's going to be able to adjust to the speed of the game. Charlie Heck, the backup right tackle, he's not going to be able to play because of COVID protocols. So there's still a lot of uncertainty across that offensive line. Yeah, you change the coach, you bring in somebody who knows what the hell they're doing, you get them playing better, but does that mean they're not going to be able to still be exploited for their weaknesses? I'm not so sure. There's definitely some holes throughout that offensive line that Deshaun Watson was able to play with, and I don't think Tyrod Taylor's going to be able to. I got a pretty good feeling you're going to end up seeing Davis Mills a lot sooner rather than later, and not because he's ready, because I think Tyrod Taylor's probably going to end up hurt or nicked up, banged up, and end up maybe not out of this game, but within the next few weeks. I just don't see a lot from this offense. Now, maybe they go out there and they surprise us with some, innovative stuff in the running game. I don't know, maybe some things they're doing with pulling their guards and tackles. Maybe they're able to push some teams around, but I have no confidence in that whatsoever. I think the defense is going to be able to compete, but the offense is where Houston's going to be really lacking. The only thing they have, or the only hope I think they have going into this week against Jacksonville, is they're facing a young, inexperienced quarterback, and if they can force some turnovers and give Tyrod Taylor
and that has been looking good
in that hobbled offense some short fields, then we may be talking about a different ball game. But if that offense is going to be 3 and out, 5 and out, and punting the ball all the time, and it's going to be a field position battle, then I think the playmaking ability of Lawrence gives the Jaguars the upper hand, and they probably win the ball game. All in all, I'm taking the Jacksonville Jaguars 23-19 over the Houston Texans.
Okay, hey, and you know what? Again, Urban has that winning mentality, and I can really see Jacksonville coming out and winning this game as well. Now, as far as Tyrod Taylor, now, again, it's all predicated if Lovie Smith's defense continues to look like they did in the preseason, where they're flying around and they're swarming, they can give Trevor Lawrence and that offense a whole lot of problems because, of course, we're playing without Travis Etienne. I don't know if DJ Chark is back yet. That's one of the weapons for Jacksonville. So I don't know if they're going to have their full complement of players where they can really build off their last preseason game.
You have a hungry James Robinson that's going to jump
James
right
Robinson,
in,
who can run the football. Absolutely.
Year, so
well, he's the starter anyway.
I don't think they're going to miss a beat there at running back.
So let me ask you this then. Why would you think that Tyrod Taylor is more of a detriment to that offensive scheme and that offense more so than Davis Mills? Because at least if you're talking about that offensive line being putrid or may having some issues with COVID protocol, wouldn't you think that the escapability of Tyrod Taylor will bode well for the Texans more so than Davis Mills sitting back there like a sitting duck?
Well, yeah, theoretically, yeah, but it only really helps the Texans if he's able to scramble and keep his eyes down the field, which is what Deshaun Watson was really good at doing, and I'm not so sure Tyrod Taylor is because we haven't seen the guy play since, I don't know, what's been 2-3 years since he's actually played it. And what we've seen in the preseason has been so damn vanilla. They haven't been able to move the football. It's just a 5-yard out here, 10-yard out here, quick slant here. Everything's so simplified.
Right.
I mean, I've seen nothing. Right. I've seen nothing that gives me any reason to believe.
Maybe they're holding it for this first week.
Well, I would hope so, but I mean, yes, it's going to help. He's going to help them with his legs. When he gets out of the pocket, I expect him to be running a whole lot more than Deshaun, would be, as he would be keeping his eyes down the field. But he may surprise me. I don't know, but I just don't see it yet, Greg. I just don't see him being able or being that guy to where they're designing an offense that he's going to be able to escape and make plays out of the pocket in, just like Deshaun did. I think they're going to try to protect him. They're going to try to run the football a whole lot. They're going to try to get him throwing these quick little short passes all the time, dumping it off to the running back when you can. And they're just going to try to live in a world where they're going to try to win ball games 20-13,
and the receivers are going to have to help them out and make some plays.
Yeah, they are, but they're young at the position. I mean, Nico Collins is going to get a lot of work as a third round pick out of Michigan. And rookie receivers, as good as they may be, it's even some of the best. It's hard for them to get off and running and contribute to an offense the way you may need that out of that number 2 guy as a rookie, even some of the best. I mean, think about DeAndre Hopkins when the Texans drafted him. He lived up to that solid number 2 behind Andre Johnson. Mm-hmm. And I mean, it was only to the tune of 900 and something yards and a few touchdowns. However, he showed promise, and of course he became the great player that he is now.
Right
but
on.
That would be like phenomenal if Nico Collins was to do that. I think we were hoping that he has like a 500 600-yard season where he catches a couple touchdowns. But the fact of the matter is, when you're in that, if he's going to be that number 2, that outside guy for a team that's going to have success, they need him. They need more.
Yeah,
and I just don't know where it's going to come from. They're working out a guy in Danny Amendola, who's very familiar with the Nick Caserio, the GM, and that Patriot way.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
And he's a guy clearly whenever he's healthy, he's been a contributor on every offense he's been a part of. So I could see him helping out here, but still, you're lacking in play-making, game-breaking ability.
Yeah.
Where is that going to come from?
Yeah.
Either it's going to be one of these young guys like a running back and Scotty Phillips. Cooks, he's explosive, but he's getting to that age where you wonder, is this going to be the year where he's a step slower? And instead of taking...
He's younger than you think.
And I get that.
He's not even 30.
No, but at some point in time, he's banged up a lot.
Yeah, he's banged
up
a
So
lot.
at some point in time,
He's banged
you
up
wonder, when is he going to lose that step? I mean, clearly teams around the NFL were not confident in his longevity or the prospects of his longevity because he was a one-year rental and trade for so long throughout the the Texans have hung on to him for the longest since the Rams had him.
Well, you know what? That's kind of surprising. Now, maybe it has something to do with his injuries, but even when they were trading him like this, he was coming off like 1,000-yard seasons when they were doing this.
But it's because you're taking a risk because you see a player that is one injury away or one concussion away from not being able to contribute to the level of his talent, which is a number 1 wide receiver. And even right now, if we're ranking number 1 wide receivers throughout the league, Brandon Cooks is still going to come way down low on the list.
Absolutely.
So I mean,
but I think for that team,
he will surprise you.
Go-to guy.
He will surprise you. I mean, he broke last year. There were some quick post patterns that he was able to take to the house, and you're like,
run after the catch.
He still has that burst of speed. But
you know what he's going to help with Tyrod Taylor, not to cut you off, is when Tyrod Taylor starts scrambling. He finds a way of getting open a lot.
Right.
Brandon Cooks, he finds those little seams and he, so he
but
always finds himself. But a lot of that was
because of a lot of the defense having to keep their eyes in the backfield and watch Deshaun Watson, and then having a true burner and true deep threat, a legitimate, bona fide deep threat in Will Fuller. So it changes everything. Now, in the passing game, Cooks is going to be the focal point. So that just makes it harder. So you wonder if he's got extra eyes on him because he's the focal point of the offense, is he going to be able to break away as often as he did in the past? Is he going to be able to have those game-breaking plays? And if he doesn't, where is that going to come from in this offense?
Yeah. Hey, but like you said,
it's going to take a resurgence of one of them running backs. Philip Lindsay having a career year. Mark Ingram. I don't think David's going to be able to do it.
Heavily.
But I mean, it's going to take them having one of them years where they're shocking you with their playmaking ability. I mean,
I agree with that, especially without Deshaun Watson. Their best playmaker is not even playing.
Whenever you've got an offense that's pedestrian, where are the big plays going to come from? You hope that you can break some big runs. I'm still not seeing – I haven't seen anything that makes me believe that Tyrod Taylor is going to be chunking the ball down the field, taking chances, throwing it up for grabs like the Texans have in the past. Those big chunk plays. I mean, you think about it, they led the league, the Texans, at 4-12, led the league in passes over 20 yards, plays over 20 yards because of Deshaun Watson.
Right.
I don't see that being replaced in this offense, so I don't see them having success. I just don't know where it's going to come from. If Philip Lindsay goes out there and rushes for 1,000 yards and Mark Ingram does the same thing, then maybe we're singing a different tune. But I just don't see it happening.
Here's what I think is going to happen with the Texans as far as I think the defense, I think they're going to lean heavily. I like the culture and the attitude that David Culley has brought to this team, along with Lovie Smith on the defensive side of the ball. So if they can make some things happen on the defensive side of the ball and the defense can keep them in games, and I think the overall energy and the overall way that they're coached up and they're going to just be playing with a chip on their shoulder because everyone feels like you do, that they do not have a shot. I think the energy is going to start from the defensive side of the ball. The fact that the defense is going to be flying around. Then, obviously, on the offensive side of the ball, you're going to lean heavily on that run game, and you're probably not going to have to use Tyrod Taylor as much as possible as that often at all. Of course, obviously, you're going to have to pass the ball. You can't just completely just lean on the running game to where you don't have no semblance of an offensive passing game. But I think Tyrod Taylor will be serviceable enough early on. I've never seen him for a long period of time really carry a team like that.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to see. He may have a flash here and there, but I want to see him throughout 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games and see how he really looks within that offense. Again, they don't have big play weapons on the outside other than Brandon Cooks, but like you said, I agree that he's not a true number one at this point. He's more of a number two, a real good number two receiver. I agree with that. But it's going to be heavy in the run game, and they're going to try to out-physical people, and I think they're going to let their energy really dictate really how they play the game. So we shall see.
That's a great point. If they can go out there and force turnovers and get after the quarterback, force fumbles, put teams in precarious situations, third and longs, and do that consistently, that's going to make things a whole lot easier for Tyrod Taylor and the likes of this offense. It's just I need to see it in live action.
We'll see Sunday.
The preseason was a good sign. All the turnovers and everything flying around the football. But I've been fooled before by those types of performances in the preseason.
Yeah.
And then you get into the regular season and you realize that they know exactly where your holes are at, and all of a sudden they're going right after them every time. And what are you going to do to stop it? You're figuring out, oh crap, that's where our holes are. What are we going to do to stop this? And I've seen NFL teams like that just unravel in opening week, and all along you thought during the preseason when everything was Bluebell homemade vanilla that they were actually going to be pretty good. So I still do have that fear for the Texans. And if I'm Urban Meyer, Greg, I'm going out there. I'm looking at Clemson film from when Trevor was there in Clemson, and I'm going to go do what Bill O'Brien did with Deshaun Watson for the first few games. I'm just going to run everything Clemson ran, so he already knows what's going on, and go out there and run that style of offense that he's comfortable in. And if you look at Lovie Smith's defense, at the NFL level, he had a lot of success, but if you look at it back at Illinois, I know they weren't – they're lacking a lot in the talent area. But he had one of the worst defenses in the country.
Yeah.
Against those types of schemes and route combinations. So why don't you throw at him maybe something he's not the best at, and throw those types of route combinations and route schemes at him? And I could easily see Urban doing something like that. And then here you go. The next thing you know, they're hitting the holes in that cover two. They're finding the hole in the zone, and they're really making it difficult for the Texans to get them off the field. Jacksonville does that, the Texans don't stand a chance.
Well, you know what? And that's just it right there this upcoming Sunday. Between one of these two teams, both of these teams were not predicted to be good at all. And again, one of these teams are going to come out of Sunday feeling real good about themselves, and they're going to try to use that momentum moving forward. I've been on the record as saying that I think Jacksonville is going to be better than a lot of people think. Now, I think the last game where they beat the Cowboys in the preseason, they probably got more confidence since that game. I think Trevor Lawrence is a bit more comfortable since that game. Again, going through live action, going through live NFL speed, and I think he's feeling more comfortable. Now it's going to be ramped up another notch because it's going to be an actual first real game. So you're going to be playing against the number ones the whole game, not just for the first couple of quarters or the first couple of series. So they're going to be coming at you. They're going to be doing some things that you probably didn't see in the preseason. So I think obviously one of these teams are going to come out of this game feeling real good about themselves. Now, I think the Texans now, of course, Jacksonville, they have to be creative. They have to be creative, and they're going to try to lean on the run game as well. They're going to try to simplify things for Trevor Lawrence. But Trevor Lawrence, I think he's the type of quarterback, he's the type of guy, he's going to go in confident, and he's going to go in realizing that he's not facing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So he's going to go in feeling good that he can get the job done. Every level he's been on, from high school to college, now to pros, he's hit the ground running. And I think he's going to go in with that attitude. Now, are they going to have the right offensive scheme, to your point? Are they going to scheme everything up right to where they get these receivers open? They have certain route combinations to where everything is – you can't be vanilla. You cannot be vanilla. Now, Lovie Smith is a guy – we say that about Lovie Smith and what he was not able to do at the University of Illinois, but we also have to harken back to what he was able to do with the Chicago Bears.
Right.
Here's a guy that went to the Super Bowl.
Right.
And noted for being a great defensive coach.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with because his schemes are designed, it's a base cover 2 scheme, but they're going to run multiple different zones. They're going to run a lot of cover 3. They're going to run some cover 1, but they're going to disguise it and make it look like what it's not. In order to do that and to do that well and not have a quarterback be able to figure you out at the line of scrimmage, you got to have some really savvy veterans. You got to have some talented players. You got to have people or players in your scheme that have a full understanding of what you're trying to do. Because if you give tells or you give signs to NFL quarterbacks or NFL offensive play callers, and they can see and they know what your disguise is, they can figure you out, then it's going to be a long day for Lovie Smith and company. But at the NFL level, unlike in college, you've got players who, they're a notch above when it comes to football IQ. So I do expect this Texans defense to be much better
some wrinkles at it.
than that Illinois defense, and that's where they can make some hay. Because I think talent-wise, clearly I think Jacksonville's better, and they should score more points. But where they can make some hay is by confusing.
You think they're better on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, the Jacksonville's better on the offensive side of the ball,
right,
and should be able to score points against this Texans defense. Where they can make some hay is if they can catch some instances where they confuse him. They catch a blitz that he's not able to pick up. They catch him holding the ball a little bit too long. They catch him maybe not setting his feet and making a bad throw, taking advantage of those opportunities and turning them into turnovers. That's going to be the Texans' opportunity, and that's the only way I think they win this game. But if you think you're going to drop your guys, you're going to drop 8 guys back into coverage, and you're just going to be able to defend against Trevor Lawrence and against the likes of, I don't think DJ Shark's going to play, but they still got Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault. They've got players that are fast and can make plays. You think you're just going to sit back and cover against these guys? I'm not so sure that's going to happen. You've got to force Lawrence into making mistakes.
Well, and he's going to take his lumps. He is a rookie, and this is the pro game, so he's not going to come out and just light the world on fire.
But if you let him bring the game to you,
yes.
If you let him bring the game to you, he will.
Yes.
I guarantee you, he will.
Because
you got
they're going to lean on the run game
in that preseason game
last
week, didn't you? If you let him bring the game to you, he's going to.
And that's what I'm talking about.
Texas can ill afford to do that.
Absolutely. If you let him get that confidence where he's just back there just surveying the field and he's just spinning that ball around the field, if these guys get open, he's going to put the ball on them. And with each completion, he's going to build that much more confidence, and he's going to really feel like he belongs. He already does. So Trevor Lawrence, they're going to lean on the run game, a lot of play action, and then they're going to have to get him outside the pocket from time to time and let him do his thing. Again, so you got to have to let him use his athleticism without running him into the ground and really putting him in a situation to where you're really going to put him in harm's way. A design run every now and then, but not like he's J.T. Barrett or somebody like that, or the way they were using him in Clemson a lot of times, which I didn't understand. Again, he blew out his shoulder doing that. But he won that championship, too.
Use him like RG3.
Oh, no. So it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, again, whoever comes out of that game with a victory, they're going to be feeling real good. They're going to be 1-0, and they're 1-0, and they have a full season ahead of them, just like everyone else.
Yeah, the Texans come out of that game, they're going to be like, woohoo, we're 30% to our predicted season-long win total. You know
what Jacksonville has to do?
And they'd be actually a good friend of the show, Richard Johnson. He's predicting the Texans to go 0-16, so they will have obliterated his prediction if they're able to pull it off on Sunday.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see. But, again, I like the way David Culley, at least in the preseason, the energy that those guys were playing with. Now, Urban Meyer, he's going to have those guys playing with a lot of energy, and even though he's probably not – he's wise enough and he's smart enough to know, of course, they're not going to win the Super Bowl this year. I'm sure they're going to play with their hair on fire, and they're going to fly around. And on the defensive side of the ball, they're just going to swarm to the ball, and they're going to try to congregate to the ball and just make things happen. So, and then again, on offense, I think Trevor Lawrence, if given the opportunity to sit back there and survey that defense, he's going to find some open receivers. And with each completion, it's just going to get that much more difficult for the Texans because his confidence is going to build more and more as the game goes on, and I don't think that bodes well. They have to try to knock him around early and probably try to shatter some of that confidence. But I don't think Trevor Lawrence is built like that anyway, so he's going to keep bringing it.
And that's what the Texans defense throughout the preseason has been able to do, get after the quarterback early, force sack fumbles, force TFLs early on and kind of set a tone for the game, and hopefully that carries over into the regular season. Now, Greg, the game everybody is talking about, and everybody wants to talk about the season opening, the game that kicks it all off, Thursday night, the Super Bowl champions are going to be, they're hosting your Cowboys. Am I correct? The Super Bowl
Yeah,
champions
they are.
hosting your Dallas Cowboys. Greg, tell me right now, because Tampa Bay, we already know, top to bottom, they're bringing back all their defensive starters on defense. They're bringing back Brady.
Offense, too, I think.
And bringing back Brady, Evans,
All 22.
Godwin, Antonio Brown's looking like he could have a renaissance year.
Right.
You know, when he gets a full season under his
Get
belt.
his legs up
now
under
he's
him,
got
right.
that off season under his belt. Tell me how the Cowboys
Drama-free offseason, I might add.
Tell me how the Cowboys get this done, because my biggest fear is that they're going to unleash everything but the kitchen sink at Dak Prescott and really force him to do some things with his legs and his arm outside of the pocket to beat them.
Well, see, that's why I would have loved to see Dak. Now, of course, that shoulder injury probably played in that as well, as far as him not getting on the field at all in the preseason. But that's why I would have loved to have seen Dak at least in a series of 2 in the preseason, because you're going to open up the first game of the year against the defending champs and that defensive front and that defensive line, that defense, the way they fly around with Devin White and those guys. You see what they did to Patrick Mahomes.
Right.
Now, of course, Dak, now, again, you don't have Zach Martin right now.
That's a big loss.
That's a big-time loss.
Big loss.
But, hey, next man up is not going to be any excuses. But what they're going to have to do, they're going to have to – you can't get away from the run game. You're going to have to try to establish Zeke as much as possible, because if you let Tampa Bay just pin their ears back and come at Dak, it's going to be a long night. And so the offensive line is going to have to protect as much as possible, but you're going to have to keep Tampa off kilter, so to speak. You're going to have to keep them on their heels with – you can't just come out pass happy. You can't just come out just trying to sling the ball around the yard and just think that that defense is not going to get home more times than not. I mean, and of course you're running against a very stout defensive front in Vita Vea and in Ndamukong Suh, but you have to try to establish the run and keep the defense honest. And then you have to hit them in the passing game. You have to use that. You have to utilize their run game and use some play action off of that. And these receivers, Amari Cooper, Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, they have to step up. They have to step up, and they have to get open. You can't be smothered by these defensive backs. I don't care if they're coming off a championship or not. You have to utilize your talent, get open, and as long as Dak has enough time to throw that football and pick these guys apart, I think the Cowboys can move the ball. Now, what I'm wanting to see is how the defense is going to look. I think the defense is going to be a lot better, and of course, Tom Brady, the best to ever do it, you're probably not going to be able to get home and get too many sacks on him, because if you do get a sack or even maybe 2, all he's going to do is just start using these 2- and 3-step drops and just start getting the football out. But if you're a real good defense, that should work in your favor, because if he's taking 2- or 3-step drops, there's only so many routes that they can run. So you're probably not going to get the full complement of Mike Evans unless it's just a quick fade route and he's just going to go get it. But you're going to have to put pressure on Tom Brady. You're going to have to change it up. You're going to have to use the inside blitz. So you're going to have to try to get pressure on Tom Brady as much as possible. And you're going to have to be strong in the run defense game too. So I'm really more interested in seeing what the Cowboys defense look like more so than anything, because I honestly believe that the Cowboys offense will move that ball up and down the field, even without Zach Martin. I really think they can go put up some points. But again, you have to be balanced. You can't be completely run game or completely pass game. Yeah. But on the defense side of the ball, you have to fly around, you have to swarm to the football, and you have to play with a lot of energy, and you have to be stout in the run game. But you have to go after Tom Brady, knock him off his spot, make him feel you every play. And even if you don't get home, you have to let him know that you're there. So we'll see what happens in that regard, but I still think my Cowboys have a chance, and I'm going to predict my Cowboys go up there and get this victory on Thursday night in Tampa. I think you might catch Tampa coming in there a little bit overconfident. That's going to be their ring night or whatever, or they're coming off the Super Bowl victory, and I think they're probably going to be at least I'm hoping that they're not going to be on their A game. And even if they are, I mean, the Cowboys are going to have to accept the challenge and do what they do. But I think my Cowboys come out with that victory Thursday night.
Man, that is going to be a tall task. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you.
It's going to be a tall task.
I know there's a lot of hype. There's Cowboys fans are confident. We haven't seen any Dak in the preseason, but he's definitely back. The reps I've seen in practice, he looks good. You know, Zach Martin being out, that troubles me a lot, because now you've got you got a really stout defensive front that can get pressure up the middle if need be.
Yeah.
And that's where
and even in the run game,
and I think that's where the biggest problem can be had. The immediate pressure right up the middle through the A gap. If they're getting a push right there, that's a problem. And the Cowboys aren't going to be able to come in and just push this defensive front around, and beat them down with Ezekiel Elliott like they might be able to do some other teams. They're not going to be able to do that to Tampa Bay.
Well, you have Lyle Collins back. You have Tyron Smith back.
And that helps.
It helps. But, of course, Zach Collins is a huge loss.
Yeah, definitely. Zach
Martin,
didn't Zeke say he was the most important player on the entire offensive squad?
He is,
and you've got, talented receivers, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb can do damage across the middle of the field. Where's that timing at with Dak Prescott, though? Because they're going to be playing a dangerous game of chicken with the young linebacker in the middle. Is it Devin White? They're going to be playing the game of chicken with Devin White and CeeDee Lamb. If that timing's off a little bit, you know what's going to happen. You're going to CeeDee Lamb in two pieces. and that's not going to be good for the Cowboys early on. But you understand what I'm saying? That timing, especially with a new receiver, a guy he hasn't played with a lot,
have to protect him.
It's going to take time. This is where, really, if the Cowboys do win the game like you're talking about, this is where Amari Cooper's really got to shine.
He does,
This is where he's going to have to show up and prove everybody. I'm seeing these quotes as I'm scrolling through Facebook. I think I'm the best receiver in the league, Amari Cooper. This is where he's going to have to prove that he is the big-time gamer that he's been billed to be. We all see it. I mean, he goes through these stretches where he's phenomenal.
He looks unstoppable.
But then he'll have a game where he's checked out mentally, and it totally turns you off to the player.
Right.
No, this has to be Amari Cooper's game. If they're going to win, like Gregory Beatty says right here on the Sports Court every Tuesday from 6 to 8, if they're going to win like Greg says, then Amari Cooper's going to have the biggest game he's had the last 2 years.
You know what? And what he's going to have to do, and to Amari Cooper, and you're going to have to play to his psyche some, because he is what he is at this point in his career. And I agree. Sometimes he checks out mentally. But a lot of times that happens when he doesn't feel like he's involved in the offense. It shouldn't happen. He is supposed to keep it coming every play. But if you don't get the ball to him early or something, or you throw the ball to him a time or two and there's great coverage on him, it seems like he checks out. And I don't like that mentality. He has to be more of a dog. He has to be tougher. I mean, coming out of Alabama, you wouldn't expect him to be like that. But he's kind of an introvert type of guy, an introvert type of personality. But the talent is there. What they're going to have to do, you're going to have to come out early. The first series, throw him a screen pass. I don't care if it goes for nothing, but get the ball in his hands. Let him realize he's involved in the offense. He's going to be involved in the offense. If you can get him going to where he can feel, because in one-on-one coverage, he can beat anybody. The way he comes in and out of his breaks, I mean, it almost looks like the guy is going to blow out a knee every time he comes out of a cut or a break until he's feeling down on himself. So he's going to have to be involved early and often. You're going to have to, but the main thing is the protection, like we're talking about.
Yeah.
The protection. They're going to have to protect. But also, to negate some of that hyperactivity by Tampa, we're going to fly around and we're going to get after Dak and all this and that. You have to slip Zeke out of the backfield. Slip him out of the backfield.
They're going to do that without a doubt.
Yeah, they're going to do that. And, of course, Devin White is probably going to be all over that.
I mean, if you watch Hard Knocks, they've been working Zeke, not only getting him the ball out of the backfield in the swing patterns and out in the flats, but also motioning him out of the backfield and getting him in the slot and forcing teams to figure out a way to counteract that, which I think that's going to play a part. Mark my words, you're going to see that. You're going to see that. You're going to see Michael Parsons.
I want to see him fly around and match Devin White's intensity.
I'm interested to see. Now, they sort of play different positions, but I'm interested to see how Dan Quinn uses the young Parsons in blitz packages where they're bringing an extra guy, because I know they're going to do both with him. I want to see how often they bring him on the edge, how they use him on the edge. And of course, I don't expect them to put him right down there and put his hand in the dirt, but they're going to have him, or they have
to move him around.
They have the opportunity to use him in a multitude of ways to where he could be there, a guy who the Texans used, Javian Clowney, maybe he didn't put up those type of numbers that you wanted, but you move this guy that's uber athletic all the way around across the offensive line. The quarterback never knows where he's coming from or if he's even coming at all, and all of a sudden that's just one more thing that Tom Brady has to think about. So you're making him just a little bit slower. He's got to think a little bit longer, and you got one more split second to maybe get your hands on him or force him off the spot, which we all know is the kryptonite to beating Brady, getting him off the spot.
Absolutely.
But in all, like I said, Greg,
touch him up a little bit.
Yeah,
he's going to complain.
If you hit him hard,
he's going to complain.
But
let
all
him
in
get
all,
flustered,
Greg,
if that's possible. But
with the offense's inability, I guess, or the lack of game experience right now with Dak Prescott and these receivers, it's going to be a tall task to go out there and be able to pick apart what is a really opportunistic, athletic, and fierce defense in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Probably the best defense in the league, hands down.
I know. And you know what? I like to be very objective, and I am confident that the Cowboys can make some things happen. But I'll be honest, that was kind of a homer pick right there.
Yeah, but and think about it, Greg. If they do go out and win, not to take anything away from the Cowboys, but what everybody's going to be talking about is maybe Tampa Bay's not as good as we thought they were. Maybe these guys have lost a step. Maybe they've got the Super Bowl hangover. Mm-hmm. And that's going to suck, for the Cowboys if they do go out and get this great victory. But that's what the storyline is going to be. It's not going to be the Cowboys winning there and manhandled the champ. It's going to be, maybe the champs aren't who we thought they were.
Yeah. That will be at least one side of it. Now, of course, you're going to have the Cowboy lovers like
and then
myself.
You've got Denny Green over there with the Cowboys hat on. They are who we thought they were.
And we let them off the hook. So we shall see. Again, it's going to be very, very, very interesting this Thursday to see which Cowboys team show up. Dak is coming back after he did not play last year, or he got hurt in the fourth or fifth game it was. So he hasn't played in the preseason like we just said. So let's see how he comes back mentally with guys around him going at his legs or just, with that fierce pass rush. And let's see how they handle that. Again, Zeke is in the best shape of his life, but more so than anything, they're going to have to get those offensive linemen. And even though Zach Martin is out, I do like the depth of the Cowboys' offensive line. I hope Tyron Smith can actually get back to some kind of semblance of who he once was. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer whenever he retires, the 5 years after that. So, and of course, Lyle Collins out of LSU, who would have been a first-round draft pick. I think he ended up going in the supplemental draft, but he wouldn't have been a first-round draft pick if it wasn't for off the field Lyle Collins.
No, he was an undrafted free agent that signed the biggest undrafted free agent contract.
Yeah, because he was projected to be a first-round draft pick, but the off-the-field issues, right.
He was just a person of interest because he knew a young woman who unfortunately was involved in an incident where she was killed. And with everything that had happened with Aaron Hernandez and what the Patriots went through, the NFL went through as a whole, teams were just not willing to take a chance on what ended up being a guy who had nothing to do with that situation whatsoever.
Right.
But he went from being a surefire first-round pick out of LSU to being, the highest-paid undrafted free agent, I think, in NFL history when he signed with the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm over here kicking dirt around in my driveway because I couldn't believe the Cowboys were able to get this guy as an undrafted free agent. It's almost like they had 2 first-round picks that year.
Right, exactly. So we'll see. Is there any other games?
Absolutely. Before we're getting down to the tail end of the show, but we're going to touch on these big matchups.
Let's go.
I'm going to start right out of the gate with Steelers and Bills. The return of Ben Roethlisberger from injury. In Pittsburgh, I know they have high hopes. Mm-hmm. A lot of doubters outside of Pennsylvania about the Steelers. Mm-hmm. How do you see this one playing out? Do the Bills pick up where they left off last season and continue their dominance on both sides of the football? We know that offense is going to be great. I mean, I don't see them taking a step back.
I don't either.
The defense, they've been solid. We'll see if they, I feel like there's more of a chance that the defense slides a little bit than the offense. But how do you see this one playing out, Greg? You got Ben Roethlisberger coming back. They've got a multitude of wide receivers outside. Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, Chase Big Play Claypool. Mm-hmm. And how do you see this one shaking out? And then also don't forget the addition of the young Najee Harris in the backfield. Could be a world of difference, filling in for James Conner, where James Conner has sort of lost a step. Mm-hmm. If Najee steps in and now they have that big bruising back they used to have with the likes of Bettis and whatnot, does that make them back to being one of the premier teams in the AFC? I don't know, but how you see it shaking out, Greg?
Well, this upcoming game right here is going to be interesting. I still think Buffalo gets the job done this upcoming weekend. I think Josh Allen is an MVP candidate. I think he's only going to get better. He's great right now. I think he's only going to get better. You have that offense to go along with that defense. So they're a year removed from having some success in the playoffs, from seeing themselves with that success. So I think they're only going to be more confident. And so I see Buffalo continuing on that trend like they were last year of being one of the top teams in the AFC. I really do. Now, the thing about it is, with Pittsburgh, I'm really interested to see how they come out and how they look. Of course, a revamped offensive line. So you don't know, as much as I love Mike Tomlin, and it wouldn't surprise me if Pittsburgh came out and they looked like one of the elite teams in the NFL, even in the first game, because Ben Roethlisberger is a first ballot Hall of Famer. So that elbow has mended even more. So let's see if they're going to open the offense up and throw the ball downfield to Claypool and Juju Smith-Schuster. So they're going to have to open the offense up and really make that Buffalo defense feel like that they're going to at least take some shots downfield. Now, as far as Najee Harris, I think they have them a superstar in the making in Najee Harris at running back. Now, how soon is he going to be able to get off and get going? Now, obviously, you have Buffalo in this first game, a very formidable defense. The defense wasn't their strong suit last year as it was the previous year, but they're formidable and they're good. So you're going to have an offensive line that's going to have to be able to protect Ben Roethlisberger, give him some time. And, of course, in the run game, Najee Harris is going to have some holes. Now, of course, Mike Tomlin is the type of coach, he can get these guys motivated and ready to play and to play over their heads. They have the talent. On the defensive side of the ball, Pittsburgh can fly around. They can fly around. And so it wouldn't surprise me if the defense was competitive and they kept the offense in the game. But what are you going to get from that offensive line? Are you going to be able to protect Ben Roethlisberger? And is he going to be able to push the ball downfield? Because you have the talent in Juju Smith-Schuster and Claypool, and now you have Harris, like I said. But how is the offensive line going to look? But first and foremost, they have to have protection, and Najee Harris has to have somewhere to run the football. But if you're going in like that and you're not sure about your offensive line, the main thing you do is bring it on the defense side of the ball. Bring that energy, bring that intensity. Of course, you have T.J. Watt, one of the best defensive players in the game. He's going to be coming off the edge. And so you have a very formidable defense, a great free safety. So I see Pittsburgh being competitive in this game, but as far as who I think wins the game, I have to go with Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the Buffalo Bills in this one. But, look, I think it's going to be a close ball game. And the main reason is because right now Ben Roethlisberger, he looks spry. He's fresh.
Oh, he's spry.
He hasn't
fresh
been beat up. He's at all the rest of the world. He's probably in the best shape he's been in the past 2 or 3 years.
Right.
So I think they're going to come out slinging the ball around the yard. We mentioned just a few moments ago, all the talent that they have on offense. I left out tight end Eric Ebron, who certainly adds another element to their game, and they're real strong at running back. Harris, Benny Snell Jr., who I like a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I think he can start. He can start in some places. They're going to be more formidable on the offense they have before. It just all kind of circles around Big Ben because we have that fear that he takes one good shot in the leg, and all of a sudden he just lost, a lot of velocity off of the ball, and it's just he's not the same guy.
Yeah.
And teams know they're not going to go deep, and when you don't have the threat of Big Ben throwing the ball over your head,
right,
it really puts that offense down in a vice.
Compacts
and it's hard for them to have success. But on defense, to me, it hinges on, is T.J. Watt going to play? Because we haven't seen he's questionable for the game.
Okay.
And we haven't seen him all preseason long.
Right.
He hasn't practiced much. So is he going to be out there? Yeah, he's injured right now. Is he going to be out there? And if he is, I think that's a huge boost, obviously, for the Steelers. But to me,
Cam
right
Hayward,
now, the Bills,
Fitzpatrick at free safety.
well-oiled machine. They're just going to keep rolling right along.
Now, where are they playing
right
that game? That always matters, especially when you have fans back in the stadium now.
It's going to be in Buffalo. I'm almost certain. Let me double check just to make sure. Yes, that game is in Buffalo.
Okay.
Who's going to be screaming their heads off because they want to keep their football team there in Buffalo. But just they're going to be too tough on offense, score too many points. I think Ben shows a little bit of rust. That's why they played him in the preseason to help try to prevent that. But it's no secret, he really can't move around very well back there. So they're going to be sending all different types of blitz packages after him. And if they get on him in a hurry, they get him banged up early, then you're going to get a look at why everybody's a little bit hesitant to jump on that Steelers bandwagon. You look at the roster on paper, you look at the depth chart, you look at the talent, you're like, man, they should win the division. They're that good. But then you're like, wait a minute. Ben could go from being very, a quarterback who you feel like can lead you to victory to being a guy that's a complete liability, like we saw later, last year.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, to me, if that happens, that defense can be all world. And Mika Fitzpatrick and the likes of those guys, they could be turning the ball over left and right. It's still not going to be enough to beat the teams like the Buffalo Bills or like the class of their division, which would be the Ravens or the Browns.
Right. And speaking of the Ravens, they lost Gus Edwards. Gus Edwards is he's out with a torn Achilles to go along with J.K. Dobbins. So that doesn't help because Baltimore offense is predicated on the run game until Lamar Jackson and that offense coordinator and that scheme really goes to the next level. So I hate that for Gus Edwards and the Baltimore Ravens. I really hate that. But Ben Roethlisberger, make no mistake about it again, like I said earlier.
With a tough game against the Raiders Monday night.
Oh, yeah. Now, that will be a tough game. It's going to be interesting to see what John Gruden, how he comes out in that first game. They're going to open up in that stadium?
Yeah.
Hey, that's a beautiful stadium in Vegas. Now they're gonna finally have fans in there, but we shall see.
Hey,
but
I've been on the bandwagon that before you go back with Big Ben about the Ravens that the Texans should be actively trying to get to trade Mark Ingram back to the Ravens.
I remember you said that.
For something, and then I've heard this take around town a couple times, but I mean it's just too obvious. And then now with the loss of Gus Edwards, I mentioned to you earlier. Before we started the show, Latavius Murray cut from the Saints after having one of his best years in a while. I fully expect them to be on the phone right now and calling Murray. Don't be surprised if you see him in a Ravens uniform this Sunday.
I wouldn't be surprised. Or Le'Veon Bell or Todd Gurley. I think they've worked those guys out as well. But the only thing I was going to add about Big Ben, I mean, we say what we say about Big Ben, and of course if that elbow is feeling good, like supposedly it is, but again, the play caller, they're going to have to stretch the field more, and of course the offensive line is going to have to hold up. But make no mistake about it, Big Ben, I don't care where he's playing, if he's feeling good and he has enough time to throw the football, we're talking about a first ballot Hall of Famer who can play anywhere and he can bring the noise. So, we'll see.
He's certainly a guy who can, get rid of the football quick when you need him to.
True.
And they have wide receivers who are good at getting off of press coverage and who can make plays. And Deontay Johnson and Juju Smith-Schuster. Mm-hmm. And once they get those defensive backs looking for that short route, looking for that stuff underneath, and that's when you hit them with Claypool over the top. So there's definitely going to be some hay made there. I look at that offensive line like you mentioned. I just don't even see anybody that I don't even recognize the name of some of these people. You look at for years they've had Pouncey and Villanueva, Ramon Foster. They had guys who were staples on their offensive line. DeCastro was another one. And you're going through the line, you don't see none of these names, so you wonder, is Big Ben going to be running for his life? And if he is, then this one's going to be over before it even gets started.
Yeah. And you know what, too, real quick? A lot of times, too, with these offensive lines, and I even say this about the Cowboys, I mean, sometimes you really don't know how good these guys are until they really have a chance. I mean, the talent may be there, but if they have the right attitude to go along with that talent, I think they'll be better more sooner than later.
All right, another big matchup. We're going to try to roll through these pretty quickly. Seahawks-Colts in Indianapolis.
It's going to be
Carson Wentz first game with Indianapolis. How do you see that one shaking out?
How healthy is Carson Wentz going to be? I mean, I can see the Seahawks winning that game. I mean, I like the Colts. I really like the Colts as far as the division is concerned and moving forward throughout the season with that team. Now, Carson Wentz is coming off that foot injury. Of course, you have Quentin Nelson, who's the best offensive guard in the game. I don't know if he's going to be able to play, speaking of offensive linemen. So, of course, they're a team that like to lean heavily on the run game. And so, with Taylor and those guys, so I don't know how heavy you're going to have to be. Well, I don't know how healthy you're going to have to be to lean heavy in that run game and to really, really make Seattle pay because Quentin Nelson is not going to be there. But, of course, they are noted for having some other great offensive linemen as well. So it's all going to be predicated on Carson Wentz. How quickly can he get acclimated from coming back from that toe injury? Or are you going to be able to really, because Jamal Adams is going to be going after him. So is he going to be able to move and avoid and evade pressure? And how much of a sitting duck is he going to be? But obviously, Indianapolis is going to be trying to lean heavily on the run game. As far as their defense is concerned, we shall see. But I think the Seahawks win that game from the exploits of Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf.
I think the Colts are going to be good this year, but I'm not so sure that Wentz is just going to hit the ground running. I think there's going to be still going to be some growing pains within that offense.
And then you don't have T.Y. Hilton.
He's got some demons that he needs to exercise from last year. Where I mean, I heard people go as far to say that maybe he had life swapped with Prince Harry because there's no way that Carson Wentz could have been as bad as he was. Yeah. So, I mean, there's still a lot, that needs to be seen from that quarterback position for the Colts before I'm willing to go all in. All around that, offensive line, defensively, they're phenomenal. They're young at wide receiver, but, you can have success as long as you have talent on the outside, which they certainly do with the likes of Pittman and Campbell and Hilton when he's healthy. But I don't think they come out of the gate and get this one done. The Seahawks are hungry. They're ready to get back to world dominance as where they've been before. And I just think they're too explosive on the outside for the Colts, and with a healthy Chris Carson, they're going to come into this game well-rounded, and where they lack is getting after the pass rusher, and you know how big that could play in a game against Carson Wentz. But I think Carson Wentz, if anybody right now, he's probably one of the quarterbacks that you can get away with. If you're not getting a lot of pressure on him, I still think Carson may do some things that'll get him beat, early on in this one.
Especially not playing in preseason.
Yeah, I could just see him being a little bit slow, a little bit off, having the rust. And when you're playing against Russell Wilson and against a team as well coached as the Seahawks, I don't think they're going to have enough to pull that one off. Now moving on.
Right.
Moving on, we've got Browns and Chiefs. Browns and Chiefs. Now, this is a game. What are we talking about? A rematch of the AFC divisional round, or was it the AFC championship? It was the AFC divisional round. And, hey, the Browns surprised some people last year. The further the season went on, the better they got. And,
right.
It all kind of came to the head in the playoffs in that game against the Ravens, where they were not going to go away and they were not going to be denied.
Right.
They've made some additions on defense. They brought in the likes of Jadeveon Clowney, Baker Mayfield, one more year under his belt, one more year in control of the offense. What kind of statement would it be if Baker Mayfield and company, they were able to come out and beat the Chiefs in their own building week one? And is that even something you're going to consider a possibility?
Oh, it's definitely a possibility because I like the way they played the Chiefs last year in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't think it'll happen. I think the Chiefs are going to come out and they're going to want to redeem themselves, too, for that Super Bowl loss. So I think they're going to come out flying on all cylinders. I mean, you look at Chris Jones on the defensive side of the ball. He's going to be flying around. Of course, you have Tyrann Mathieu. And then, of course, on the offense side of the ball, I mean, nothing needs to be said about Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and those guys. I mean, you know what they're going to do. You know what they're going to bring to the table. Now, Cleveland will bowl. They will put a good defense out there, and it should bowl well. It should bowl better for them than it has in the past if Jadeveon Clowney can give them that help and that pass rush opposite Myles Garrett. So if you can give that pass rush a boost by Jadeveon Clowney living up to his potential, it's only going to help because they have the talent on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, you have defensive backs. You have Greedy Williams. I think he still may be out with that groin injury. But you have Dale Pitt back now. I mean, so you have some defensive backs for Cleveland that are back healthy now. And, of course, you have Denzel Ward out of Ohio State. So the defensive backfield is healthy and talented. So you're going to have that going for you to go along with Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett coming off the edge, the best defensive end in the game. So, of course, they're going to try to get after Patrick Mahomes. Now, what Kansas City is going to have to do, they can't be too pass happy as well. They're going to have to really lean more on their run game this year. And they're going to have to use that first-round running back from LSU last year. Mm-hmm. How you pronounce his name?
Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They're really going to have to utilize him more this year. Now, he was injured the last part of last season, but I think they're going to have to utilize him more this year and really have more of a balanced attack to go along with that passing attack because you drafted him in the first round. And this is a guy, you saw the first game he was in last year, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You saw what he was able to do in that first game he played last year. He rushed for over 100 yards until he started getting banged up. So you have a bell cow for a running back, and you utilize him to go along with that passing attack. I mean, that's going to be something special. But I think Kansas City wins this game. I think Kansas City wins that game. Odell Beckham will definitely help and give Baker Mayfield that other dimension and that other weapon on the outside. But I think you're playing in Kansas City. I think Kansas City, they're not coming off a Super Bowl victory. They want to get back. So I think they're going to come out and hit the ground running.
It's hard for me to go against you. I like this one's close for me because I'm really high on Cleveland's ability to play keep away from Patrick Mahomes and that lethal offense just because of just how talented they are up front of the offensive line and the stable of backs they have with the likes of Chubb and Kareem Hunt, a guy who Kansas City's very familiar with because he was their stud before, all that stuff off the field happened.
Absolutely.
So, really, if they go in there and those kind of guys, those two guys are having big days, Cleveland's definitely going to have an opportunity to win this football game. The only thing that troubles me in this one, aside from Kansas City being one of the best damn football teams in the league, is just playing in Kansas City, playing in Arrowhead. That stadium, that crowd, the noise, they're almost guaranteed to cause a couple hiccups on offense, whether it be some false starts, and they're almost guaranteed to have the quarterback make a mistake just because of how loud they are. And I think that if they're able to force Baker, or force that offense into some mistakes as far as false starts, penalties up front, backing them up behind the sticks, or maybe it's a crucial 3rd down and 2 and then it becomes a 3rd down and 7, or if they're having Baker Mayfield having his hands on his ears trying to read sign language from the sideline because he can't hear the radio in his helmet,
right.
and they're having trouble getting the play in and out, of the huddle, and maybe he's got to improvise a little bit. Nothing against his ability to do that, but against the Chiefs, I don't think that's what's going to work for them. So to me, that's the X factor. That's what to me gives the Chiefs a little bit of boost above the Browns in this one. They're playing at home. It's going to be loud, and if Baker's going to have to beat you with his arms and they're screaming and hollering while it's going on, I'm not so sure he's going to be able to. Or maybe they force him into making that one crucial mistake that costs him the ball game. But don't get it twisted though. These are two teams that I have rated very highly. Mm-hmm. This is going to be a very competitive ball game, and I've got Cleveland winning the AFC North this year.
I do too. I do too. I really like Cleveland a lot.
So take that, put that in your pipe and smoke it.
Hey, I agree. I agree. I really like Cleveland a lot, man. But I think in this particular game, I think Kansas City finds a way to get it done.
Yeah.
They're playing at Kansas City. Patrick Mahomes is the difference. But like you said, though, the running game for Cleveland is very good.
And it cannot be matched by Kansas City. They do not run that style of offense. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, even if you could, he's not the type of back you'd want to use that way. They just play a different style of ball. So that's why.
But you didn't even utilize him in the backfield.
Yeah.
I mean, out of the backfield.
Right. But that's why when you go in, if you're Cleveland, if you can go in and you can ground and pound, and you can really beat them up and chew them up and spit them out on the ground.
Right.
That's why it's so much more effective
against
a team like Kansas City, because they can't play the same game with you.
Because
they're going to turn around and they're going to, regardless of what you're doing, they're going to turn around and they're going to try to move the football down the field, and they're going to try to move it down there in a hurry.
Right, and then you keep them off the field, of course. But I think what Kansas City, before we move on real quick, I think Kansas City is going to throw a new wrinkle in this year. I think they're going to lean a lot more on the run game.
That would be
interesting. And really get their money's worth out of that first-round pick, Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of LSU. So we shall see.
They're certainly built to do
it. You got famous Jameis going to start his first game.
Well, that's the next game I was going to. You got Packers playing the Saints. I would say heading down to the Superdome, but we know that's not going to be the case.
Unfortunately.
With everything going on from the
Whichever
aftermath of Hurricane
Ida.
Right. But that game will be played in Jacksonville, Florida, because Jacksonville will be here. And how do you see this one? How do you see this one turning out? This is going to be a huge game for both teams because the Saints, all the talent they have around everybody, all the talent they have around one Jameis Winston. He's the big question mark going into this year. Mm-hmm. And the Green Bay Packers, all that was made about Aaron Rodgers, where was he going to play? Was he going to be traded? Can he and head coach Matt LaFleur coexist? Yada, yada, yada. The story never ends. But we all know week one, all that stuff gets put aside because the gunslingers come into play. I've got the Packers winning this one, Greg. How about you?
You got the Crackers winning that one?
The Packers. I'm sorry. I got the Packers. I didn't say Crackers, but I got the Packers winning this one. I think I almost said Crackers.
Hey, you know what? Well, that's what happens sometimes when you go 2.5 hours or 2 hours without one commercial break. Hey, we're dogs in here. We do what we do. But you know what? Eddie? I got the Packers winning that one as well because
I'm taking the Crackers too, son.
I can't put anything past Aaron Rodgers. I just can't bet against Aaron Rodgers right now. And Jameis' first start. Now, I think Sean Payton is going to put Jameis in a great position to succeed, obviously, throughout the year. But you're playing without Michael Thomas in that first game. And, of course, they have some talent on that team. And, of course, they're going to lean on Kamara, and they're going to utilize him out of the backfield more times than not and make some things easy on Jameis. I think Jameis is going to be interesting to see how he cuts down on the turnovers. You remember when they first signed Jameis Winston, I said they were grooming him to be the starter. Now that time has come. And, of course, he learned behind Drew Brees and learned under the tutelage of Sean Payton for an entire season. So he knows how things are done. He knows what's expected out of him. And he knows he has to cut down on the turnovers because the talent is there. But I just think Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay, with that complement of players that he has around him with Devontae Adams and Jones at running back, I just think the Packers get it done.
There you go. I'm on board with the Packers getting it done. I think that defense is able to force a couple turnovers from Jameis because they're going to have to throw the football to keep up with the amount of points that Aaron Rodgers and company are going to put on the board. And I like the matchup up front in the middle for the Packers on that offensive line against a little bit of a soft defensive interior. We know they're strong on the edge when we talk about the Saints, but that interior, I think there's going to be some hay to be made for the likes of Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, who are going to be more of a – there's going to be more of a split this year.
Because A.J. Dillon can go.
You know, if
He's
you reach up there and you got Aaron Jones high in your fantasy draft, I mean, it's hard to argue with you. I've drafted him in the first round over the past few years. But this is the year where they're expecting A.J. Dillon to take a lot more of that workload than he has in the past. He's going to be in that Jamal Williams plus role, you know, where Jamal Williams got a lot of that second work, but Aaron Jones was still the guy. They're going to have A.J. Dillon running some of them first-team packages, first-and-goal packages that used to be all Aaron Jones work. Now you're going to see A.J. Dillon sort of get in on some of that, and that's going to take away some of his fantasy value. But in this game in particular, I think it bodes well for Green Bay. They're going to have the ability to get that push up front, and I don't think there's any way that the Saints stop them on the ground.
Hey, you know what? It's going to be very interesting to see this upcoming
But
weekend.
does Aaron go out there and run the ball, or does he go out there and want to prove a point and try to throw the ball all over the yard? Because you know they can call whatever play they want in the huddle. When 12 gets up to the line, he's going to run whatever the hell he wants, you know.
Yeah, well,
so we know that already.
Right.
There lies the issue with the entire relationship between coach and quarterback. So that's what I'm willing to see, because if he goes back out there and I think he drops back the pass, I mean, he's one of the greatest to ever do it. They could win, but he's also going right into what I think is the teeth of that New Orleans Saints defense. You're giving the opportunity to the likes of Marcus Davenport and Cameron Jordan to come in there and tear your head off.
Right, because the Saints fly around, so they're definitely going to have to lean on that run game. He's going to have to now Aaron is going to have to be smart. You don't want to sabotage your chances of winning the ball game or winning the ball game to try to prove a point to your coach. So hopefully they've mended fences, him and the organization, enough to where he's going to go in, he's going to follow the game plan, and he knows what it takes to win. He knows he's going to have to lean on Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, and, of course, you have Devontae Adams. So I think Aaron is going to go in. He definitely wants his stats. He definitely wants to hurt them through the air. Now, New Orleans has some good cornerbacks over there, so I really want to see that game. I really want to see how that game plays out, but I think Green Bay gets it done this upcoming weekend. Of course, there's a lot of other games that we can talk about. We'll definitely break them down next week. Hey, did you see what First Take? Now they've changed their format. You know, Max is not on First Take anymore. I think he's doing the show with Keyshawn and Jay Will in the morning.
Did my eyes deceive me, or did I see Irv working there on First Take with
That's on Mondays, I think. That's
Stephen
on Mondays.
A. Smith.
I think each day he's going to have somebody different. Today,
Michael
Marcus
Irvin,
Spears.
and they were going back and forth about TB12 and
they were
Michael
going back and forth
Jordan about
Miami
the GOAT.
too. About Miami, about the Miami Hurricanes back in the day.
Right.
Nah, that was good. That's going to be good every Monday. Of course, it was good today with Marcus Spears. Then he's going to have Keyshawn on there. And he's got – I want in on that too. Get at me. I want in on that too. My big bro, Stephen A. Let me in on that, man. Herbstreit have my number. And if he says he doesn't, he's lying. Hey, but you know what? It's going to be fun, a fun weekend, a very fun weekend of football, college and pro. Now, of course, next week we're going to talk a lot of Houston Astros early and often because it's going to get that much closer to baseball season. Didn't get a chance today because the start of football season, college. Went kind of long on college, more so than I expected. But, hey, we hadn't talked college football all season other than mentioning here and there. So we're going to talk college football every week. We're going to throw in some high school football, going to throw in a lot of pro, and, of course, a lot of baseball. We're baseball fans on this show, so get ready for a lot of Houston Astros talk moving forward.
Hey, before we go, Justin Fields will be seen on the field this weekend, yes or no, against the Rams?
He should be.
No, will he? I'm just saying, I mean, will he be seen on the field?
I say yes. I say you implement him in some kind of package to get him out there, get him going against that NFL speed.
I thought it was going to be whenever Aaron Donald was standing on the sideline with Andy Dalton's leg in his
Well,
hand.
see, that's what I was going to say.
No.
Now, how soon does he start? That remains to be seen how it happens this week with Aaron Donald when he has about 4 sacks.
Taking a bite out of that ham hock on the sideline.
You know I was going to bring that up. You know I was going to bring that up.
Gets in.
You know I was going to bring that up, but I left it alone. I say, well, let's just see how it plays out this upcoming weekend. You know I want to see Justin Fields in there from day one. So, but we'll see.
Well, I hope for him and then that lackluster offensive line that if he does get seen anytime soon, it's next week.
Hey, so we
Aaron Donald and company are
you
primed and ready. I know we didn't talk about their game. They're gonna. I guarantee you, we're both picking the Rams to beat the Bears handily. Before we get out of here, Greg, you got to give me your Super Bowl pick. And I thought of this real quick because the Rams are a trendy pick for the Super Bowl this year. Now that they've added Matthew Stafford to an already all-world defense. Give me your two teams, one AFC, one NFC. The two teams you're saying right now on the sports court before the kickoff of the NFL season, the two teams you think are going to be facing off on that eventful Sunday early in February.
Kansas City and the Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, man.
And I'm going to go with my Dallas Cowboys to win it all.
Damn it. He went with the star. Hey, that's a good one. It's hard to argue with you. The Rams are a trendy pick. I could easily see that happening. But I don't know, man. I think that Green Bay, this just may be the year that Aaron Rodgers was able to pull off that NFC Championship win. If he gets back there again, they're going to the Super Bowl. He's not going to lose that game again. I'm telling you, after all this, stuff he's gone through off the field with the head coach and whether or not he's going to be in Green Bay, if they make it back to the NFC Championship again, I don't care who it's against. They're going to the Super Bowl. My pick is Green Bay for the NFC and the AFC. I'm taking Buffalo.
Okay.
I think that Kansas City's got, we know they're the best team. But sometimes it's not about being the best team. It's about winning that game.
Absolutely.
And if Buffalo can put together a season where that game's going to be played in Buffalo, on an icy field or a snowy field, I think that's going to bode well, obviously, for the Bills, and they could end up beating a Kansas City team who I think is a better team. If they end up beating them and being in the Super Bowl. But everything's setting up for Buffalo to be really the best team in the league this year. We'll just see what happens if Kansas City continues on that just unbelievable onslaught they've been on for as long as I can remember now.
Hey, it's going to be a great weekend. Tune in. Fox, CBS, ESPN, college football, all that. We watch all that. We just flip the channels. We watch everything, all of them, all of it. Let's watch some football this weekend. Of course, baseball season, again, is getting closer and closer to the playoffs, so looking forward to that. So we will see you guys next Tuesday. Hey, until then, let just live and let live.
Later.